Could please call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone to the Town of Pendleton's November Planning Commission meeting. I could have a roll call, please, starting to my left.
Brad Valentine.
Kyle Icar.
Tim Pritchard,
Jenny Sisson, Carol Hannah.
thank you. We have two members absent, Andrew and Cheryl, but we do have a quorum. I could ask the board to review the minutes on your pads and entertain motions for approval.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for the last meeting.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion to second. All those approve. All those in favor of approving the minutes as submitted, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, thank you. Okay. Excuse me. I have a statement from the town and the staff. It's concerning our procedures that we follow, Planning Commission. It's also concerning the position the staff, the town has to take by state law governing approvals and when builders come in for request to rezone. The process for the town to approve or disapprove a proposed development is outlined in state law. In accordance with Indiana code, any property owner or their representative has the right to petition the Planning Commission and have a public hearing to consider the application for rezone. Tonight, the Planning Commission will analyze the petition against the town's comprehensive plan, other approved plans, ordinances, as well as any existing conditions and or variances placed upon the site. Completing this analysis, the Planning Commission will vote to give favorable, unfavorable, or neutral recommendation to the town council concerning the proposed rezone. The order of this presentation will be staff introduction of the property, which is Pendleton, petitioner's presentation, which is the builder, staff analysis, public comment, questions, then our vote. Okay. So tonight on the agenda is proposed rezone of approximately 98 acres of large lot agricultural land, A1 to single family SF3 zoning, Franklin Urbans and Pendleton Development LLC via DR Horton, Indiana. We'll have the staff first, Brian.
All right, so if you direct your attention to the screen, the property on the petition this evening fronts on two roads, State Route 38 and 600 west of I-69. It is two parcels, both combined at approximately 96 to 98 acres. It's zoned large lot agriculture or A1 and is currently used as a seasonal agricultural field. So the petitioner this evening is requesting a rezone from that large lot agriculture, again, A1, to residential small lot, SF3. I've listed the zoning minimums here for SF3 for you. I also printed a copy if you want to keep that in mind as the petitioner goes along, that's what they're requesting. So that's a really brief introduction. If there's no questions for me on the location, the zoning, the property itself, I can turn it over to Mr. Brian Toohey and his team. They're here representing the petition. Are there any questions for me on the site itself?
Is 600 a collector?
Mm-mm.
The local?
Mhm.
Okay.
I don't have any more.
Okay. I will turn it over to Mr. Toohey's presentation.
Can we start?
Sure.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Brian Toohey. My address is 50 South Meridian, and I'm here representing the petitioner in PC 10042023-01, as Hannah Rose just very properly introduced. Here with me tonight is Lee Phillips from DR Horton, and also Gordon Kreitz, our civil engineer. Thank you for hearing our case this evening. This is an interesting case. It's an interesting site. This first slide here, and thank you, Stephanie, for bringing this up. Here's our site. As Hannah Rose said it's about 97 to 98 acres. It's on the south side of State Road 38. It's west of Interstate 69, and it's just east of South 600 West. So one of the things I think that you look at is, what is around a property that's being rezoned. And starting here on the west, our next door neighbors here is Foster Branch and Foster Ridge, single family homes. There's single family homes along here. And then County Road 600 West, as you might recall, dead ends down here to the south of the site. And then, of course, State Road 38 runs across the top of the site, and the site actually has a small portion of frontage on State Road 38. As you're heading east towards the interstate, you have Bain Welker Equipment. That's a farm implemented construction equipment supply and repair facility business. It has about 8 acres and a 17,000 square foot building. Right next door to it, right in here, this property right here is owned by a company called Gaines Development LLC. And I note that it's for sale. I don't know how much it's for sale for, but it's about 114 acres. And it actually has frontage on 38 and frontage on 69. And then we have Mystic Waters Campground, which is about 32 acres or something. Then you come to I-69, and on the other side of the interstate, so the southeast quadrant, you kind of see what you'd expect to see. There's a mixture of large industrial use, Tractor Supply. There's some multifamily apartments here. There's some storage rentals here, a medical office, daycare facility, a Get-Go, McDonald's. So sort of typical, I would say, interstate interchange uses. If you think about what's up the road at LaPel at State Road 13, you've got kind of similar uses. You've got a Love's truck stop. You've got I think it used to be called Rickers. I'm not sure what they're called now. You have a truck sales and repair facility, and you have storage. So kind of similar development. And what this is proposed is, as Hannah said, is to change this to SF3 and just have single family homes on this site. Could we please go to the next slide, Stephanie? Thank you. And so when you look at the site, in addition to looking at what's around it, it seems to me that it's sort of practical, prudent, whatever the right word is, to look at what's zoned around it. So we started over here on the west side of the site. We've got SF1 and A1 and A2, then some county zoning R2. So we've got residential zoning all along the west side of the site. You get over to the east side of the site, then it's a little different. You've got some general business where Bain Welker is, and you've got this A1, this 113 or 14 acres, it's undeveloped. And then you've got general business where the campground area is. Then you cross the interstate, you've got heavy business, general business, multifamily, heavy industrial, sort of a multitude of uses. My point about that is that right here around the interstate, you get, as you'd expect, kind of commercial uses. And I don't think that it's very likely that you're going to get residential uses in this 114 acres that's for sale now, because it's got frontage right here on 38 and frontage on Interstate 69. And so if you distill that down, this site is really between SF1 zone property or R2 and GB zoning. So it sits in between those two. And of course, it's separated from the SF1 by County Road 600. Next slide, please, Stephanie. Thank you. This is looking east. So 38, State Road 38 is up here. And this is a sizable wooded preservation area, which we'll talk about in a minute. And I'm standing on 600 looking east, and there's the Bain Welker equipment building. Next slide, please. So what does Horton propose to develop? Horton, if this is approved, would respectfully suggest that this SF3 zoning would allow them to build a subdivision with about 213 homes. So on 97 acres, that's about 2.18 units per acre. And in this community, they would preserve this mature, large stand of trees of about 10 acres. They would preserve it in one of two ways. Either they put a deed restriction on it, so it couldn't be developed or for houses or improved, it would remain as it is, except for trails that would go through it. And I'll talk about those in a second. or they would make a donation of that to the Pendleton Parks Department. And we've met with Aaron of the Pendleton Parks Department, and the way he sort of summarized it, he said, there's interest in Pendleton Parks taking that property. We have to sort out what the credits would be in terms of impact fee, what the trails like that would be approved in there, and just the details. But he expressed to me, we met with him once and I've talked to him on the phone. He said it was accurate for me to say that Pendleton Parks Department is interested in that site. But in addition to that feature in the development, I think a couple other things I point out to the Plan Commission is, you can see the whole development is ringed with green area. And that green area serves a couple of purposes. We don't know what'll come in here, but we suspect with Bain Welker here, they're probably not going to go away because they've got an impressive building. It looks like a good business operation. So we anticipate that this might develop like the other side of the interstate. There might be some general business, there might be some multifamily, might be some mixed use. And so Horton's thought is to create a 50-foot or so buffer along this east property line, so our homeowners would be separated from whatever is going to go in here with a landscape buffer, and continue that along the south. And then over here on the west, we have 11 larger lots, about a half acre or so at a minimum. And those 11 lots would they would be the only houses that would have direct access onto 600. And so as not to create a lot of more traffic from those 11 lots, we've only put in 2 access points. So these 11 lots would share 2 access points, only 2 access points onto 600. And those homes would be set back from the road, I believe Gordon said about 70 to 80 feet or so. So these homes would be the more expensive homes. I'll talk about that in a second also. And they would be set back from 600 in that 70, 60, 70, 80 foot range. Then up here, you can see we've also set back our homes, again, in that 80-foot kind of range from 600. And so that the only homes that would actually face our neighbors across the street would be these 11 lots right here. The rest of the homes would be north of that wooded area and east of that wooded area and behind it. And in through this development, we would have a trail coming from State Road 38 into a trailhead here. And then there would be paths in these woods also. We would propose a small parking area if this becomes a public park, maybe 10 cars or so. This wouldn't be improved with playgrounds or soccer fields or anything like that. It'd be just a hiking wooded area is our thought. We would have pickleball courts, swing sets, playgrounds, a playground here, a pavilion kind of area, not a pool, but these would be for our residents and they would be maintained by the homeowners association. There'd also, of course, be sidewalks on both sides of the street and pathways through the development like so people could walk through here, connect up with the wooded area. Next slide, please. The comprehensive plan for the site, I think, actually calls for a PUD, which I think I understand may not be a classification in your zoning ordinance anymore. But in that comprehensive plan classification of PUD, what it called for, contemplated, was a housing, and that's what we're proposing. Stephanie, could we please go to the next slide? It's kind of interesting that this site was at one point zoned as a planned unit development. And I looked up the old planned unit development zoning. It was called Foster's Branch PUD. And what it allowed members of the Plan Commission was a myriad of uses. It allowed single family homes, it allowed multifamily apartments, and it actually allowed some business. And the density of that was between 2.5 homes per acre, depending on which section of Foster's Branch PUD we're in, on up to 8 homes units per acre, which would have been multifamily. In its approved form, it allowed for 363 residential units or 150 more residential units than what we propose at 213. Their minimum lot sizes were smaller than our minimum lot sizes. Our larger lots are bigger than what they had in theirs. Their homes sizes were smaller than what our home sizes were. They allowed for vinyl siding. We've proposed a commitment that would eliminate vinyl siding. The point I would suggest is that the proposal today results in 150 less units. It has bigger lots than the previous proposal. It has larger homes. It eliminates apartments and commercial uses, and it's also less dense than what had been previously approved. Next slide, please. So this wooded area that we're focusing on, it is directly across from the neighbors at Foster Branch Ridge and Foster Branch and Foster Ridge. And we would propose that would remain that. We think that's not only an asset if the town takes it, but we think it's a terrific asset for this neighborhood and will add to the value of that. The key piece of that is as you come out of these two subdivisions, which are very nice homes, this wooded area would remain in place. And so their view would look very similar to what it is now. There's no question about their view is going to change from a cornfield to 213 homes. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying right in this area where they exit and enter their subdivision, that wooded area is going to remain largely in place. Next slide, please, Stephanie. To illustrate that, this is from an aerial photograph. That's the wooded area. There's Bain Welker, there's State Road 38. There's the two entrances into those subdivisions I just referred to. That will, in large part, remain in place, other than some walking trails that may get through there. Next slide, please. And I just took this photograph from Foster's Branch Drive, looking straight east into that wooded area. That wooded area and that view should not change as a result of this development. Next slide, please. So what are the types of homes they would propose to build? Horton's here in town already in Carrot Glen, just north of where we are tonight. These homes would be, some of the homes would be similar to those, and some of them would be bigger. This is an executive series of homes. These homes have mandatory brick on elevations for some commitments on the front elevation. They would have options that would add brick or masonry to other sides of the home should the homeowners want to do that. These homes would be somewhere in the $500,000 to $550,000 range, and they'd be 3,000 plus or minus square feet. And they call this their executive series. And those would be all those homes on the 11 lots that would face Foster's Branch and Foster's Ridge. And you can see they have 2 or 3 car garages, or 1-story or 2-story. Next slide, please. The remaining part of the subdivision, this is what we call this on the 60-foot wide lots. These homes would be somewhere between 350 to 375,000 at the low end, and then north of 400,000, 400 to 425,000 at the high end. These homes are similar to what has been built in Carrot Glen, and for the Plan Commission's consideration, the average sale price in Carrot Glen is about $375,000. The average person that buys a home in Carrot Glen, combined, if it's a husband and wife or couple, combined income is about $102,000. That's the average. And so what Horton has found is that a number of people that have moved into Carrot Glen were not people from out of town. They were from people from here in town that wanted a new home. And from Horton's perspective, it's been well received because they've sold about 60 homes a year. That's their average for the 3 years that they've been developing it. So they've sold about 180 homes, and there's 50 or 55 homes remaining to go. So these homes have been well received by people, a number of whom are already Pendleton residents. Next slide, please. This is the interiors of the homes that would be built. Of course, the furnishings or whatever the people that happen to have. These homes have been built in Whitestown, in Zionsville, in Noblesville, Greenwood, Westfield. So communities in the central Indiana area. Next slide, please, Stephanie. So to summarize that, we would like to rezone the site to SF3. And on the site, we would have about 11 lots that would be 100 feet wide, and there would be about 21,000 square feet. So roughly half an acre along 600 across the street from the existing neighbors. The interior lots would be a minimum of 7,500 square feet on 60-foot wide lots. The homes would have 2 or 3 car garages that have multiple elevation features, so they're not flat front homes. They would have stone and masonry and brick, or fiber cement siding, or lap or shake, board and batten siding. They would not have vinyl siding. We don't think there's anything wrong with vinyl siding, especially if it's applied correctly and use the right type, but that was a commitment that they were asked to make, and they were fine with that. You would have dimensional shingles. The anticipated sales price, as I explained to the neighbors the other night, was $350,000 to $500,000. The more they've looked at it, they think that anticipated sales price, there'll be a few at $350,000, but probably more towards $375,000, given what's happened in Carrot Glen. And the top price may get up to $550,000, but $350 to $500 is a good range. Next slide, please. We suggested, first off, we appreciated working with Hannah Rose and Scott, and they suggested some commitments, which we've submitted here tonight as part of this presentation. In summary, the commitments are that there'd be no vinyl siding, that there would be a 70% masonry brick minimum on the fronts of homes in the executive section, and a minimum of half the homes in the other section would have a brick front elevation. We would limit the access to 600 West to just those 2 entrances to serve the 11 homes, and then the 1 entrance that is north of Foster Branch and Foster Ridge. We would design an entryway signage and landscaping package that would designate this so you knew you were arriving at Baker's Point. The 10-acre woodland preserve area, we'd either preserve it as a tree preservation area, which might include trails, or we would deed it to the town for purposes of a public park. If we do that, we'd like to talk to the town about a credit for park impact fees. Then we would agree on the location of a paved emergency access road. I believe that was Scott Reske's idea, and direct you down here. The idea is to have another emergency entrance down here to get back to this area of the neighborhood if for some reason this was closed off and this was closed off. We're fine with that.
Could you go back a few slides, Stephanie, so we can show that real quick?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Just one right there. That'll do. So, yeah, the idea was to have an emergency access right here that would double as a walking trail, a 10-foot wide trail. And so if this was closed off and this was closed off and you couldn't get back here, the emergency personnel would have an access to the subdivision right through here. And so we've agreed to put that in also. And then we would prepay the road impact fees on the 11 lots that would be at the southern end of the site. As soon as we pulled the first building permit, we'd prepay those road impact fees for those 11 lots. Last slide, I think. maybe, oh. So am I okay in time?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got 3 slides.
Okay, all right, thank you. So to summarize it, it seems to us that this site is between very beautiful, nice homes in the Foster Branch and Foster Ridge neighborhoods, no question about that. But it's right next door to Bain Welker, sort of a commercial use. And also borders 114 acres that's for sale. And that 114 acres is between Bain Welker and the campground. And that 114 acres has extensive frontage on State Road 38 and a pretty fair slice of frontage on Interstate 69. Our thinking is that if that site was going to develop as a residential subdivision, that probably would have happened given the very good, robust residential market we've had. So our thinking is that this site is sort of step back from the interstate kind of uses that you're going to expect to see where the campground is and in that 114 acres, and you've already got a kind of commercial use in Bain Welker. We think that having single family residential is consistent with what's in this area. It seems to match what the comprehensive plan was looking for. And I think it also matches what the Interstate 69 study plan called for, and they call this the Southwest Quadrant. And they talk about a multitude of different uses, but it did talk about having single family residential uses. We would suggest that preservation of that 10 acres of woods also meets what was talked about in the Interstate 69 plan about creating trail connections from these areas to the town. And we would provide trails and those connections. We have architectural commitments that we think will produce a superior product than what would have been allowed in from the 2004, 2008 zoning when that occurred. We also think that this design improves the access to State Road 38. And what Mr. Resky suggested was this road needs to be a bigger road. I think it's called a collector. And so that if folks here wanted to, they could come across here and X out this boulevard entrance onto State Road 38. We also believe that this design keeps most of this traffic out of this area here because our entrance is up here and there's only 2 cuts here for these 11 lots. So these folks down here wouldn't have any reason to come down to a dead end on County Road 600 West. It's not to say it won't happen. I'm sure it probably will. And certainly 600 West is going to get more traffic, this not being a farm field. But we believe that this is north where these homes are. We think that design is superior. When we met with the neighbors and we had good attendance, there was a number of questions about, could the schools handle this? And so I called the superintendent, and what he said, and he was very helpful, he pointed me to this study. And what he in summary said is that the Pendleton school systems are doing well. They're good schools and they're very attractive to people. But they're really only about 85% at capacity. And he said that really to keep the school system in the way that they want to function is they need good, steady growth of new students. He said that they calculate about a half a person for each home is what they would anticipate would come from a subdivision like this. So if there's 213 homes, that's 107 or so students. And he said that's been pretty consistent in Pendleton. He said that from a school standpoint, he had no issue with being able to serve the students that would come from this neighborhood. And what what he thought was better is that this comes in over time, because this would be a 3 to 5 year kind of development. Whereas when you build an apartment community, it's built and then your occupancy is right there pretty quickly after it's built. And so he was very helpful in pointing me to this the study, but you know, of course, can check with him. But my conclusion was that he would have no issue with serving students that would live in this community. And then the last slide is when I looked at your I-69 comprehensive plan for this southwest quadrant. So just to orient us, because it took me a while to get oriented. Here's 69. They wrote 38 across here. Here's our site right in here. Here's Foster's Branch right there. What this study concluded is that executive style homes would have market traction, and that neighborhood trails that connect to a park in the Keystone District and then the downtown would enhance the appeal of this area. And so we have those trails in our plan, and we have single family homes. And so I was trying to understand what they meant by executive style single family homes, because certainly the homes in Foster Branch are executive style homes. There's no question about that. But if you dig a little deeper into this study, what it says is that households earning more than $100,000 annually comprise nearly 20% of the households. The majority of the household growth, this is what they forecast, over the next 5 years will be in households earning over $50,000 annually, with most of that focused on those earning $100,000 to $200,000, resulting in measured demand for executive level housing with price points over $350,000. So members of the Plan Commission, in reading that, Horton thinks that study is it's pretty accurate given their experience at Carrot Glen. Their experience is the households that are buying in that subdivision earn more than $100,000 a year on average, and the households, the homes they're buying are averaging $375,000. So even above the price point that they said of $350,000. And so it seems to us that this acreage, this 97 acres, with this type of proposal, which creates a park area, has trails that will connect to the town, and will feature homes that will be between 350,000 and 500 or 550,000, which are homes that the people that can afford those kind of homes need to make combined incomes of 100,000 or more. We think that this fits in what was forecasted to happen in this southwest quadrant. And so with that, we'll conclude our presentation. Thank you again for your time in hearing our case, and we'll try to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
Would you like my analysis first, and then you can ask Mr. Tui some questions, or do you want to ask those first?
Have your analysis, then we'll go to the board.
Sounds good. All right, so the function of planning staff is to analyze the petition against the comprehensive plan, other approved or relevant plans and ordinances, as well as any existing conditions or variances placed upon the site. And the department presents facts and analysis, and based on that analysis, staff has the following comments. So a few of these Mr. Tui already alluded to. Property is shown in our 2018 comprehensive plan as a planned unit development, or PUD, which, while now it is a disallowed zoning district, indicates this area is suggested for future use as a residential development. Just as a side note, we are getting someone under contract to update the comp plan in really early. So we'll be taking care of some of those things. The 2021 I-69 plan also shows this area as single family residential that could incorporate executive style housing, also with the park and trail space, as well as some of the Keystone District. for both of these plans, it appears that a residential use in this area is considered desirable and appropriate. So I'm going to get into some objectives in our comp plan that specifically call that out. So objective 5.2 speaks to diverse housing types within the same neighborhood, and those are encouraged. The preservation of the 10-acre woodland is consistent with objective 2.5. And that requires all new residential developments to be within walking distance of a park, recreation, or open space. So this would take care of that. It's also consistent with objective 3.8, which promotes the preservation of natural features in a new development or redevelopment. Okay. The conceptual layout, even though it is just a concept, no developer gets into heavy engineering until really primary and secondary planning phases. It's generally consistent with the applicable standards that we have, like density, the amount of open space, the sidewalks and street trees that are required are shown on that concept plan. The exact engineering, as I said, is done with primary and secondary platting for all of those items essentially, and they have to meet our applicable standards. Primary platting is again petitioned to this board when the developer is ready. And lastly, the proposed rezone is not injurious to public health, welfare, or safety. So your recommendation moving, after we go through public comment and questions, based on Indiana code and the town's UDO, you consider the following 5 points there, and then you will vote to give a recommendation to town council.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. I'll open up questions for the board. Carol?
Do you have any plans for improvements to 600 West?
We do not, although certainly Mr. Reski brought that up, and this, I can't remember exactly what your road impact fee is, but that's why we agreed to pay the 11 lots up front, because they'll be the first ones on 600 West. And I think the idea was that that road would wait to be improved until we were through with development, so there wouldn't be tearing up road after with construction traffic. And with that many lots, it would generate, I think your road impact fee might be 7,000 a lot. So times 200, that would be $1.4 million or something. So a fair amount of money for that purpose.
And you talked a little bit about your build out plan, 3 to 5 years. How are the current interest rates impacting that? Do you?
They're certainly not helping, but the sales in Carrot Glen have been pretty consistent. So I think they believe that as long as interest rates would stay in the 7 to 8 or less range, they would expect to have similar absorption. If interest rates go to 10, or when I graduated from school 100 years ago, they were 15, then this won't be a 3 to 5 year, it will take longer than that. They believe that at these current rates, if they would start construction in late 24 or early 25, the development work, not all the homes, but the development work would be finished in about 3 years, and the subdivision would be probably built out in 3.5 to 5 years, depending on those rates.
Because we've had some experience with the interest rates and other things causing delays, and
It certainly could.
Yeah.
But even with the increase in rates, which have been pretty remarkable, significant in the last 12 months, the homes at Carrot Glen have still been selling.
Will these homes be able to be designed by the buyers? I know that changed with Carrot Glen, and initially it was because of the supply chain, but with some higher end homes, that's what people want, to be able to choose. So how will you handle that?
Lee?
This is Lee Phillips.
That part of it's an ongoing discussion about how we're going to continue in the future.
Lee, if you could you speak in the
Oh, sure.
microphone? We've got an online
Yes.
audience and make it a record of tonight.
Introduce yourself.
I'm Lee Phillips with DR Horton. Our office is 9210 North Meridian. Currently, it's an ongoing discussion. And as we move towards, larger lots, situations like this, it's an ongoing discussion that we have as to how much decision making process goes into it with how much we decide and how much our homeowners decide. So I don't have an answer for this particular subdivision. A lot of our neighborhoods right now, we make the majority of the decisions, but that's not the case in 100% of our neighborhoods, and it's not something that is a hard and fast rule that we're not revisiting all the time. So it's something that we're constantly looking at, and we're looking at it in this neighborhood as well.
And just some other questions. I know you have a special relationship with the makers of the Hardy plank. James Hardy that's what I researched online. You guys have some partnership. I realize there are limited colors, but I do believe that has expanded. So will this neighborhood, if approved, see some different colors?
I'm not a designer.
They make a paintable product.
Yeah, we buy our siding pre-finished. And I know they do offer a wide range of colors. That's not my department, and it's not something that we've hashed out yet. We have a lot of national partnerships, as you alluded to, our partnership with James Hardy. We have a tremendous amount of national partnerships, so those answers haven't been.
And I realize that's not in this, but it's just some things that I've noticed with Carrot Glen
Mhm.
that I was curious about with this neighborhood.
Yeah, a couple questions. So you said that the woodland area would be completely preserved, but is that a commitment that you will not, except for the paths, because your concept plan looks like the tip of that pond is right in front of the road to the ridge. So is that, I mean, you're committing to saving the entirety of the 10-acre wooded lot?
Yes, but if that final drainage plan, and Gordon could address this, encroaches at the south end of that, yeah, that shows more than what our other plan shows. We don't have that designed yet.
Sure. Is there an outlet in that area or?
Gordon, you want to address that issue? But, since I didn't go to Purdue, you'd be the person to do that. It's Gordon Kreitz, he's with Steppenworth Engineers.
Hello, as Brian said, Gordon Kreitz with Steppenworth and Associates, 7965 East 106th Street in Fishers. Yes, there is a drain that runs right through the middle of those woods. Relatively defined drain with a good sized pipe underneath 600. Whether or not that pipe needs to be expanded or replaced and improved, following calculations to determine that. But that pond does encroach into the southern portion of those woods. I don't see that pond expanding beyond what we have right there. I've done some rough calculations on it. It could decrease in size, and obviously if it decreases in size, we'll do the decrease to the north, so we'll preserve more woods. It does have an outlet, as does the southern ponds. There's a regulated drain on the very southern tip of the property, so outlet there.
So the way that lays, you will remove trees and existing woods.
Yes, and I've kept a decent buffer, and that might shift over to the east a little bit more in between the road and the west bank of that pond to be able to keep a strip of trees, so it's not just road and pond.
Sure.
That was the intent.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, the 10 acres is what's remaining, so
Less the pond.
yes, to the north, you got the back of the lots, to the east, back of the lots, you got up to the right, proposed right away for 600. and then the northern bank of that pond. That creates 10 acres. The woods itself is probably 13 to 14 acres or so, maybe a little bit less. But yeah, it's 10 acres once you subtract that encroachment of that pond.
And there is a 40-foot common area required along the perimeter.
A
It doesn't-
buffer.
A buffer yard with landscaping and mounding. It doesn't look like it's necessarily reflected. I just want
I think you made it.
them to be aware that that's required
Are you
along,
talking
along 600.
along 600? Yeah, I think you can sort of see it in the northern area.
Yeah, this looks like the executive area and the pond. It kind of goes
Mhm.
away.
So it
just
will, in that little green area, there will need to be some heavier buffering, but
And then the other comment I had was, so one of the commitments is, so the 10-acre woodland preserve area, if the town decides to take that over, you're requesting a reduction in your impact fee credits for that acreage. But you're utilizing that acreage to calculate your density. So it seems like a double dip. So maybe if you're gonna get credit for donating that to the town, your density should be based on 87 acres. And if that's the case, SF3 allows a maximum of 2 units per acre. So your maximum unit should be more like 185. That'll be addressed on the primary plan.
I agree. It seems to me that's a planning issue, but
I mean, you're not gonna come back and
I
ask for a
accept-
variance to density, right?
No.
You're gonna stick to 2
Yeah.
lots per acre.
you know, we'd like to be, we'd like to get a land stretcher and find that there's 98 acres or sort that out, but we'd like to be right in that, just slightly over 2.1 kind of density.
in the primary platting phase, you have the ability to waive that to allow it to be 2.1 as opposed to 2.
But we're not committing to a density with a rezone.
No.
That's true.
Make sure it's in the minute or the notes, Stephanie, before we come back to plotting. What about his comment and the other one about the buffer?
Good for me.
Robert?
This may be for Hannah Rose, but how does the 146th Street extension come into play with regards to the placement of this subdivision?
Well, I think we've discussed with this board a few times that, that idea, that layout is really practical. However, the 146th Street extension will happen in some regard. I think it'll cut up north a lot sooner than it does. Roadways through the Gaines property going southwest are definitely appropriate. But as far as that road cutting through where it was shown on the map, it's not a practical place for a road like that. So it is shown as cutting this directly in half. That is not actual. But we have discussed that a little bit before with that southwest quadrant. There's a couple issues that we probably need to iron out before long. I have a
Yes.
comment from someone online. Should I wait?
Wait till the public
Wait
comment.
to
the
public.
public comment.
Let's wait to public. Chris, I have a question. Chris, Gordon, I'm sorry, Gordon. As far as construction going on, what do you think you're gonna enter and exit during construction? 'Cause I'm really concerned about the condition of 600. You're gonna come in your main entrance there in the middle?
Yeah, most likely I'll say Road 38. That's it. Used by the town and the engineers and all that to have a separate sort of access. Help with congestion.
I think that needs to be noted to try to keep construction traffic limited to that entrance, because we definitely don't want coming down 600 and coming in on road. That road's,
It's up there, section.
it's in minimal shape now. Yeah, the other question I have as far as DR Horton and Cary Glen, you pretty satisfied with your sales up there? It seems to me your price maybe has went up a little, which is a good thing.
I think we feel that Carrot Glen's been a great community. We are proud of it. I think that we're proud to be a part of the community, Pendleton. We have had tremendous feedback from our home buyers that they're happy to be in Pendleton, that they're happy to be in the community. So yeah, we feel like it's done well and we're happy to be.
Is there any more questions online? Oh, wait for the public. So,
I have one more question with regards to the construction traffic coming in with aggregates and concrete. Are the plans to utilize I-69 for access in and out of the site versus bringing the aggregate and concrete trucks through the downtown core of Pendleton?
Maybe the way to address that is, since we're the developer and the builder, we'll control where our suppliers, we can control where our suppliers come from now. Could somebody go rogue and come from east across, of course, but I don't think we'd have a problem with agreeing to as part of the zoning commitment to have our heavy equipment, construction equipment, access the site from 69 or from the west, as opposed to coming from the east of town.
okay, I'll open the questions up now to the public. If you could, please make sure you've signed in and step up to the podium and announce your name and your address, please.
Just for a housekeeping procedural type, the comments and questions should be directed to the plan commission, not to staff or the petitioner. And then the board certainly has the option, if they, on a question you'd like to have answered, to ask staff or council or the representatives from the petitioner. But questions and comments should be made to the commission.
Sign-in sheet here.
Should be on the podium in the back, right?
I guess I'm not first.
I'll go first.
Go ahead, Robin,
All right. Do I need to state my name and address and all that?
please.
Just
Oh, just my name,
Yeah, if you sign it.
Robin Brammer. Town of Pendleton resident and a business owner. And forgive me, I get really nervous about the police speaking, so.
You're fine. Take a deep breath.
Sorry. So first of all, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, detailed presentation. Thank you for allowing us to get up and speak and ask questions and voice our concerns. First of all, I just want to make a point that I spent a lot of today Googling D.R. Horton. A lot of negative reviews from homeowners. As a matter of fact, D.R. Horton has a 1.3 star rating out of 5 on Better Business Bureau's website, which is not a good rating. Not for a home builder that you're going to live in and, you know, raise your children in. I wouldn't want to be on one of those homes. At the meeting, the builders representatives, D.R. Horton, was not able to specifically let us know what types of homes. There are 3 series of homes for D.R. Horton. They could not let us know what types those were, which to me leads me to believe they're not being totally transparent with all of the information. So that's another question. You know, they're saying executive homes. I don't know what series that is based on D.R. Horton's national website. They claim that that website didn't specifically cover certain areas. If that's the case, why is it a national website? Another question I have is why only 11 executive homes out of the 200 homes? To me, that's not very diverse for the neighborhood. Why can't they put more upscale homes? Not everybody is at the $100,000 annual salary. Some people want more larger homes with more amenities, and not just smart homes, but I'm talking upscale homes. when you hear executive home, my first thought is truly an executive home. Granite countertops, wood floor, just all of the amenities that you would expect in an executive home. There are diverse housing options needed in Pendleton. We need to keep the diversity there. But we also, if you stop and look at it, how many tract home neighborhoods have been developed over the past years in Pendleton versus how many custom home neighborhoods? So, stop and think about that. I can't think of any custom home neighborhoods that have been developed recently in Pendleton. So to me, that is not a very diverse way of bringing new development in. Don't get me wrong, I'm all about growth, development, diverse homes. There are certain areas out there I love. I think it's Villages of West Clay, I think are awesome. They have a lot of diverse living arrangements, diverse homes, which is it's a great area. It's a nice area. So that's what I vision when I think of diverse developments. The misalignment with surrounding developments concerns me. One thing that for some reason was not brought up in the presentation was objective 1.4 of the 2018 comprehensive plan. And that says that they will encourage residential development that reflects surrounding residential character and intensity with a focus on providing efficient services and maintaining the urban fabric that is representative of Pendleton. I don't see any D.R. Horton style homes on the west side of Pendleton. So in my opinion, this is in total conflict with our comprehensive plan to allow these types of homes to come out there. Another thing, safety, traffic and safety impact. Yes, there will be a safety impact. Traffic will increase. If you look at the number of homes out there, we're looking at, let's just say 200 homes for ease of calculations. I did some studies and it looks like there could be anywhere 450 plus additional vehicles coming in and out of that neighborhood every day. Then if you look at the extension where they're going to divert, where I don't know, I haven't heard much about it lately, but the diversion of all the industrial traffic coming from the next exit north, 69, where they're going to divert all the industrial traffic to right there across from Bain Welker, then you have that additional traffic to worry about. I have heard nothing in any of these conversations about how that's going to be addressed from a safety perspective. You're looking at, additional traffic. You're looking at what if there is a serious accident? All this traffic is going to make it more difficult for our police, our fire to get to. So that's something that really should be considered. Another thing we need to look at as a town, not only the town residents, town council, town leaders, 38's a gateway from the west side into Pendleton. Do we really want something like this? And I'm not saying this is bad, but do we really want something like this that is going to be totally different than what is already out there that everybody sees going into Pendleton from the west? Pendleton is an awesome town. I love it. It's great. I love the old houses. I love the neighborhoods that have been built. It brings that diversity there. There is also the area on the west side where there are custom neighborhoods. And my interpretation of the comprehensive plan says, let's keep it that way. Let's keep the neighborhoods out there, more of a custom type neighborhood. Not that I have anything against it. Any other types of neighborhoods, my son, daughter-in-law live in the Falls at Pendleton. So, great house, they love it. But it's just in contradiction with the comprehensive plan. And again, if you compare it with the existing neighborhoods out there, right now it looks like, based on quick calculations, the 4 neighborhoods out there average about 35 and a half houses per neighborhood. That's a big difference with what they're proposing here. The lot sizes range from 3/4 of an acre to 1 1/2 acres. Again, another huge difference. What I've noticed here is D.R. Horton is using the total minimum they can get by with to put homes in. To me, that speaks nothing but they're looking at profits. the more they can pack in, the more money they make. They do their development, boom, they're gone. What else? I do have some questions. That green area, is that a wetland? Can it not be built on? Then be giving you guys wetland. I mean, you know, plain and simple,
Well, they could turn it into developable property if they wanted to.
but apparently they don't want to. So
Well, that's their decision.
that's fine, but I don't feel that I should have to in my tax dollars pay to keep that up. I think it should be their HOA that keeps it up. Just my opinion. D.R. Horton currently lost a $16.1 million lawsuit, September 19th. Homeowners, the entire neighborhood, there were building defects. D.R. Horton would not fix those defects. On average, each homeowner had to pay anywhere from $136,000 to $250,000 per home to make repairs that D.R. Horton refused to do. Of course, D.R. Horton lost the lawsuit, and some of the homeowners they're gonna average about $100,000, but that's not gonna cover all their bills, all the costs to repair those homes. Just something I found hey, this is all on Google, so you guys can Google it, get all the information. It's out there, it's public. Another concern I have is 200 plus lots, 2-car garages. As we know, it's hard to fit a lot of these large SUVs and trucks in garages now, especially the smaller garages that I don't know if D.R. Horton's building a minimum size garage or not. But if that's the case, you got cars parked on streets. When you have cars parked on both sides of the streets, guess what? It's hard to get through. How's emergency vehicles gonna do that? I noticed, and you talked to the superintendent from Maple Ridge, if you look at that, one half of one child per home, that's 100 additional children going to Maple Ridge. That does put them over capacity if it happens right now. Executive homes at 350. Again, why only 11? Why aren't you guys putting all 200 sites executive homes? Construction traffic, thank you for asking that question. That was one big concern, because 600 it's hard for 2 cars to pass on 600 anyway, and it's not meant for heavy traffic. And those 11 executive homes, I can see that whole bottom half of that neighborhood coming out of those 2 access points. It's not just because you got 2 access points, you're gonna have less traffic. That just means that whole bottom, if they have to go west, they're probably gonna go out to 600 up and turn left on 38. So that's a consideration. Right now, that's all I have. Again, thank you for your time. This is totally contradictory to the comprehensive plan objective 1.4. It does not align with that. D.R. Horton's representatives even agreed. It did not align with it. You know, I agree with them. It does not align with it. It does not align with what's out there. Again, what I do ask is that you either deny their request or require them to come back with more satisfactory information and more transparency. No more of this, it's all in discussions, because once it's approved, it's approved. Can't go back. So, you know, give it some good thought. It's something we need to think of, because we're going to be stuck with it forever once it's there. And is that something we're going to want to see, or we're going to want visitors from the west to see 5-10 years down the road? You know, I haven't driven through a D.R. Horton neighborhood 5-10 years old. I've driven through similar type neighborhoods, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg, you still want to come up? You were first, then had to sign in.
I signed. There's five
You
more.
want to speak?
There's five more ahead of me.
Okay.
Go ahead and get some.
I'm Barry Staldine. I'm from Foster Branch Woods, which is the northernmost neighborhood on that map. Concerns for our neighborhood, and Robin addressed many. As you can see, the headlights are gonna drive into our neighborhood at the end. That's a concern for us. 600 West has been talked about. That's too narrow the way it is. Getting more traffic on it is gonna be an issue for us. But primarily, I'm a little bit interested in the difference between an A2 lot, which is what I bought and built on, and an SF3. What's the difference between those two? Can anyone on the board tell me that?
You live in where now? Foster's Branch,
Foster Branch Woods,
which is the lower,
it's the upper one next
Yep.
where it says 10+ acre woodland preserve.
okay.
So what's the difference between an A2 and an SF3, which seems in the alphabet, that's a lot of letters.
SF is just single family.
Well, what A2 is as well, isn't it?
Small lot agriculture, 10-acre minimum lot size on A2.
So is there an A3, an A4, an A5?
A1, A2, and then SF1 through 4.
That's the next tranche.
So SF1 is the largest single family lot, and they get smaller down to SF4.
Okay, and this is SF3?
Correct.
Okay. I think, at least with the neighbors I've spoken to, not adverse to more A2s coming in, and that's what Robin spoke to. That'd be great. That would enhance our value. And as we moved into the part of the city a couple of years ago as part of annexation, kind of expect that kind of protection for our home values and our property taxes. The way it is now, our view is, at least mine is, and I think several of the neighbors I've spoken to, it's going to detract from the value of our homes. And it's moved up slower than we would have hoped anyhow, but it's not going to help those two neighborhoods. In fact, I think it's going to detract from it. In addition, I saw the new plan home values in the comprehensive plan, which was from 2018. Is that right? Has that been adjusted for inflation?
No, that document hasn't been updated.
Those values that DR Horton put up as being comparable are 5 years behind. And
So that's the 2021 plan.
has
That's
that been
just
adjusted for
for,
inflation?
no, it hasn't. It's a lot closer to 2018.
Yeah, well, maybe not. Inflation was running at 2 or 3% before. Now it's running at 8-10%. So that's a concern because it's not actually on dollar for dollar inflation adjusted basis. It's not the same. So that's a minimum I would ask for. Are you keeping up with what it ought to be? And Robin touched on one that I think is interesting. The school capacity plan, does it hope to get 100% of the seats filled? I'll bet not. I'll bet they'd like to run at 80 or 90%, then plan forward another 5 or 10 years. So you're doing 85% now. You're going to be at capacity and ready to build out more and ask for more tax money coming up if you've got 100 new kids running in the schools. So I consider that as well. Again, not adverse to it. Growth is great, but we'd like growth that would enhance our value as opposed to detract. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Take a slot and no one else wants it. My name is Greg Valentine. I live at 5297 South 800 West. I want to speak to you as the landowner right across from 11 properties and Green Township trustee. We're really proud of the homes in Fox Run and in the Foster's area. They really add to the township, kind of builds it out, you know, against all the vinyl villages we got on the west side of the township. But a couple of questions I've got. Those 11 along there, there's no way you could tie this in where they go back to the main part of the, you know, one of the other main roads, is there? Because that 11 houses is probably going to dictate what I sell that 6 acres for one day. And some of that other land along there probably be for sale sometime. I'd like to see those 11 lots somehow get back into main thoroughfare through there. The other thing is that big pond there, where the wetland, and by the way, it is a wetland. You can't walk out there without getting wet any time of the year. Where that wetland is the lowest point on that property. So right now, all that water that comes down there runs across 600. And I think, Tim, I had you come out there one time. I know some of you have seen it. It'll be water 6 to 8 inches deep up the middle of your hubcaps and 30 feet wide coming across that. It just happens to go right across, goes down Hudson's driveway, crosses right over on the 6 acres that I own. So I had to put about a ½ acre waterway in there just to get it down to Foster's Branch. So I'd like to see these folks, if they do that, you know, they're going to put an overflow in that pond, I guess. I'd like to see them, you know, get the easement and run it. It's probably 1,000 feet, run a tile down to Foster's Branch Creek and dump it properly. The other thing, I know Brian and I talked about this at the other meeting. We don't agree on it, but you look at the gross acres versus the net acres, 98 acres. But I calculate about 28 acres of common areas, woods, trails, roads, and ponds. That leaves 70 acres. Do the math. That's 3/10 of an acre per house. So that's 3 houses per acre. They say 2, it's actually 3 per acre. Why not do the density a little less, like 150, $800,000 homes? You're still going to get the same AV, probably the same tax amount. And I know I asked this at the library, and I don't think I wrote down the answer. Summer Lake. Now we got the same thing in the new Lennar. It's 23 feet from the garage door to the sidewalk. If dad drives a crew cab or mom's got a Suburban, you can't get it all in the driveway. It sticks out in the sidewalk. So it really needs to be like 25 foot to the sidewalk, and then maybe a little bit of grass to the curb. And the other lady mentioned about fire and EMS getting down these. Summer Lake is a good example of what the county did wrong 20 years ago. Those streets are 26 feet wide, and constantly school buses have to go around about to get where they're going to go to pick up the kids at the stops. And our emergency vehicles have one heck of a time getting to somebody that needs an ambulance down there. So I'm hoping these streets are at least 32 wide. Do you know how wide you're speaking on the streets? Summer Lake's 26. It's too narrow. You get a car on each side. You see what I'm doing. You got to do a little math here. And the other thing is emergency. Leave County Road 600 open and let that be the emergency exit. I know a lot of us been used it for many years. It's probably been there 150 years. We all know that it's dangerous. Look to your left and punch it. That's what I can do with my tractor and corn planter. Roger down here with his big farm equipment, the Filberts, semis, combines. You look and you punch it. This way of going out and coming out on 38 is okay if you make that road 25 or 30 feet wide. But if you expect us to turn, now that's what you showed us the other day, Brian, does that change right at the north end by that house? Still possibly a road going over there if 600 were abandoned?
The questions should be addressed to the board. He'll have an opportunity. The
Okay.
board can ask that.
All right. You see what I'm saying? You can't turn a combine in that little tiny turn to get out to that main entrance. Great, one big main entrance, but if you got a semi rolled over and on fire in that main entrance, how are they going to get in and out to the rest? That's why you have to have a second entrance to it. A couple more things real quick. Mr. Reski and I were part of the committee 3 or 4 years ago on that 146th Street extension, and I know exactly where it will go if we come down there and turn to line right up with 700 West over Green Township. It's right next to that big pond, right the 11th lot, it's right there, and it'd go right down either through or right next to Hudson's house. And it would take out a house over on 675, take 2 houses out. Of course, if you build it 150 feet wide, it'd take more houses than that. I think it's very, very poor idea to close County Road 600. I just don't understand why you would even think about it. We'd be putting streetlights in. I didn't hear anything about that. But definitely it would be nice for the folks if you put streetlights in. Think about that and do the math on that gross versus the net. Look at your paycheck sometime. There's a difference between the gross and the net. Divide that on the net and you're going to see it's 3/10 of an acre per house, 3 per acre. I hope you'll consider making some changes if you feel like we've got to do this. And I also researched the D.R. Horton homes. Right now, Ingalls just approved 220 of them in Green Township down on County Road 1050. And we went through all that with them. It must be a different group of folks because I've never seen these folks before, but they're going to be all vinyl. Real quick, talk about our schools and the population. Maple Ridge was built for 550 kids. My wife was on the board 20 years. She was on there when he built that. 550 kids. You saw how many are in there now. They've utilized extra rooms and extra spaces, but Ingalls just approved that 220 houses on 1050. They're just about to approve another 400 on County Road 800 South, bumps into Arbor, the 412 they already built or are building. And then they just approved 243-story apartments over off of County Road 800 South. So there's going to be a lot of kids headed to our schools. But if you spoke with Mr. Hall, he's the man. He knows about the population. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jay, for comments. Gary?
Mr. President, Board, I'm Gary Brammer, homeowner and a business owner. Unfortunately, for all of us in this room right now, my notes are all over the board. So I'm going to hit you from here, because I haven't had a chance to digest everything. You are hitting us with a lot that could be settled by November 9th, the next town board meeting. In fact, that was on. I mean, tonight, for the first time, people have heard about the 146th Street extension. For the first time, people have heard about the road coming out of Anderson. So there's a lot going on right now that I understand. I understand the town's viewpoint. I mean, come on, $2.1 million in fees. Who doesn't want that? Sure, we want that. A lot of things, transparency is something that's been said. I don't think we're getting the full transparency. I do agree with Mr. Valentine, and he brought this up at the library. And the response was, no, I don't deal in net, I deal in gross. Well, we have to do one or the other, and it is the net. And it is going to be more than 3 homes per acre. Average family now, what, 3.15 people per household. So now we're putting, they are putting 9 people per acre, 213 times. So that's something else we need to look at. I drove through the New Horton neighborhood today, and on every street, there were cars parked. On every single street, cars parked there. I drove through Fox Run, Jefferson Place, Foster Branch Ridge, and Foster Branch Woods, where we live. In Foster Branch Ridge, there were 2 cars parked in a cul-de-sac but that family had a moving van in the driveway. So I don't think it's something we do. We don't park on the street. And then certainly if we have to, which we're going to, I mean, we've already been told we're gonna have to drive through that neighborhood. So yeah, we're gonna be driving through all those cars on the street. My question to you to ask them, how many floor plans are they gonna have? When I drove through the neighborhoods today, 40 houses on Fox Run, I saw no duplicate houses. Jefferson Place has 52 homes. There may have been 2 houses in the back, maybe they were Drees homes built at one time, that could be close in floor plan, but nothing else. Foster Branch Ridge, 28 homes, no duplicate floor plans. Foster Branch Woods, 22 homes, no duplicate floor plans. I would like for you to ask the audience if there's anyone here that's going to speak in favor of this development. You know, who asked them to come to Pendleton? I don't think, and you can ask them if they live here. I don't think they do. They said they're happy enough with Pendleton to be building here, but are they happy enough to make their homes in Pendleton? Are they happy enough with their homes to live in that neighborhood? Do they even live in a Horton house? I can tell them, through you, I can tell them that a person that works for Horton, that sells homes, bought a house this summer in the old pumpkin patch in Noblesville, Stony Creek Estates. That neighborhood is all custom homes. Why wasn't a Horton home good enough for him? Why wasn't one of these houses good enough for he and his family? So if it's not good enough for them, why is it good enough for us? And I think if the PUD is dead, the original PUD, if it's dead, let's drop it. Let's quit going back to that, because yeah, that makes our case look good, but it's not there anymore. So, you know, stop wasting our time. The emergency exit that we talked about, will that be monitored? Will there be a gatekeeper there? Or are we just gonna allow people to use the emergency exit all the time? That was kind of confusing to me.
Probably similar to the cut through there, at Foster Ranch at the bottom,
Okay,
where the drain pickup is.
right. And on the back side of that, there's a chain. So is there gonna be someone there to remove that chain?
I would imagine the fire department has a key to that chain.
Knox lock.
So, Knox block.
So it would be designed in a way that what I envisioned is that it would be trail thing, or where you can put a mesh down into the ground and the ground goes up between it. So it just looks grass. But a fire truck can drive over that.
Okay.
It's good if they had. So there is a couple of options. If it does have a trail, it'll probably have a mallard that I don't recommend locking.
Mhm.
Something our kid figured out. Probably have.
Okay.
I don't believe in having emergency act access locked. Sure enough, the time you need it, fire truck's gonna show up. Push the key.
Right.
They know it's got the bolt.
But then it could be used at any time by anybody if it's not.
Yeah, but there's a little tricks you put in it.
Okay. Thank you for that. And again, if I'm going back and forth, I apologize. I will say that the man that developed our neighborhood 22 years ago still lives in our neighborhood. I mean, he's proud enough to tell them that he's here. Something to consider. If we don't want the cement trucks coming through Pendleton, you go over to State Road 13, and turn south, there is Shelby Concrete Plant. Right across the street from that, another concrete plant is coming. Closest point for them to get all that concrete is from 13 to 38, past our neighborhood, past 600 entrance, and then into their neighborhood. So please ask, how many loads of concrete come to a house? Multiply that by their 213. And that's how many concrete trucks are gonna be coming that way with the traffic that we already have. They're not gonna buy the concrete from Noblesville or any of, if they do, it comes from farther away. So it's all gonna come from there. And fortunately for all of you, I'm about done. But I will say, we want that growth. We want that neighborhood. We want a neighborhood. We just don't want their neighborhood. And I don't think they're hearing that. No one is asking, hey, we need you. Come to Pendleton, build houses. Come on. No, and they haven't even invested in the ground yet. If you guys approve it, then they'll say, well, okay, we'll buy the ground. They're not willing to invest in Pendleton until Pendleton says, come on. So yes, we would love to have executive style homes. Let's be real. Nothing they have shown us is an executive home. Now, the houses that are out there are executive homes. And it's unfortunate that we're out there taking pictures, but they didn't take pictures of some of those homes and then put it next to the home that they're going to build. So, yeah, we want the development. We just don't want your development. Again, Gary Brammer, thanks for the opportunity to speak. Sorry it took so long.
Thank you. Anybody else? Sure.
My name is Brian Ziegler. I live on 600, one of the houses where we've got the 5 acres. So I'm glad that everybody has also brought up Box Run and Jefferson Place. But I guess we've covered a lot of things. The 2 questions I have that you could ask them is that if they take away part of the woods and put in a parking area, and we're down to less than 10 acres, and my question would be, where are they going to put the parking area? Because it looks like it's going to be right across from my house. And is there going to have access to 600? So they were talking about if it's turned over to the city or whatever, that they would turn that into parking area. So they wouldn't remove any of those homes there, but they would have to put a parking area there. So I don't want to walk out do my yard and everything else and look out into a parking lot and stuff.
Anybody else? Questions? No? Sir?
Hey, Brian Stonewall. I live on 600 West. My question is on all the retention ponds, there's 2 little basically creeks that run. One runs across from the woods, which is basically runs all the time because it's always wet. And then there's one right by my house and runs through Stamper's property near my property. In the county or anybody has never done nothing to it. It's eroded away so bad. It's my neighbor's land is almost to her fence where it's eroded it away. So
Where do you live, sir?
Right across from the end retention pond where the 11
The
house.
very bottom one?
Right there near the end of the
Development.
10th house.
Okay.
And also back in 2004, I went to the planning commission when Urbans was trying to build houses back then when Doug McGee was manager. We went with them and had things worked out where it was going to be 8 houses along the road here and like 1.5 houses per acre on the rest of the properties. So it was less dense. And like you people said, I don't have a problem with growth. I mean, it's going to happen, but there's a lot of nice houses out there. I just want something comparable to my house that doesn't bring my house value down and that I have to drive through streets I can't get through. I've lived on that road for 30 years. I've never had one problem getting out of 600. And actually, where they're gonna be going out is actually worse because you've got people coming both ways at 55 mile an hour. Or at least at the curve at 600, they're at least 45, 50.
Slow down a little.
Yeah, there's not all the time, but they, it slows them down a little bit. That's about the only thing I have, is retention ponds and the little creeks that can't handle what they got now.
Good comments. Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Mike Schlichman, and I live across where the 11 houses are going in. And just a couple of questions or comments. Mr. Valentine actually commented that wanted to know if we could make the road go back to the main addition. If they consider that, I would rather see the front of a house versus the back of a house. The other comment I would have with regards to the emergency lane, I couldn't hear all the comments that were being said. I'm not really familiar with the emergency lane at the addition, but my understanding, it's not a paved road, is it? Well, I guess we'll find out.
I'll talk to that. Just in general, this is so the town likes to have two entrances off of road, in this case, for a subdivision. So one of the things that we looked at and put out on the table was that there would be a trail or a discrete, well, it wouldn't look like it's a road. You can buy these mats and they're a grid and it goes into the ground and the grass grows up between it. So it doesn't look like a road and you mow right over it, that sort of thing. And then the fire department would know that that's their alternate entrance if they had to. I was on this department for 20 years. We'd always once in a while go drive it, just test it, bend a little bit. So you have those. There's not so many in town, but in all of it, you just don't know. You don't see it. You don't notice. Fire departments know they're there.
Sure.
Right. The street department knows it's there. So we would try to hide it.
Okay.
So that it wouldn't look like.
Thank you. Appreciate
But
that.
that's what we do everywhere, not just for this.
And I think the concern is if it's paved into a paved road that people are going to pour out of that addition.
Right.
So based on what you're saying, feel good about that. One of my comments would be, I was under the impression, again, it went pretty quick, that that 600 was going to remain open, but there's been comments maybe that it may be closed. So at some point, maybe the board could comment on that. And then I wonder on the entrance, the main entrance that's coming into the addition. I don't know what it's called, but will there be access for cars where do they have to make just a quick left-hand turn, or is there actually, will you cut into the property where there's actually lanes for them to?
Deceleration lanes.
There we go. Thank you. Those are my comments I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Becky Wilson. I live in Foster's Branch, and my comment is that I am a realtor and show houses every day. And I personally see a huge demand for houses like ours. There are many people that want to live in those neighborhoods. Houses sell in our neighborhoods fast. They sell in Hickory Hills fast. Nobody complains. People stay in those neighborhoods for years. I've sold a lot of houses in Arbor Homes. I've started to sell some, look at D.R. Hortons. Clients don't. It's like your starter home. It's where you start because you can't afford to come to Hickory Hills. You can't afford to come to Foster's Branch. We already have a whole community of starter homes. We need the next level of house. We have an actual shortage of them, in my opinion. So I'm having to take people that used to live in Pendleton that are ready for the next level and take them to Carmel, Fishers, Noblesville. They're starting to leave because there's no other option. I think that's kind of unfortunate too. So I think we have a need to get more like what we have. And I think there's definitely a market for it. And the town can make their money the same way. So that's my thoughts.
Good point. Thank you.
So I'm Doug Heinlein. My property is the one that's directly adjacent to the exit on 600. No matter what, this is going to suck for us. It's basically going to turn our beautiful, quiet, dark property into an on-ramp. Where it's lined up is going to go directly into our living room windows, essentially. So no matter what, I'm biased. I'll admit that. I just want to encourage you guys. You did a great job shooting down the other proposed activities that they're putting over there, and we're all very appreciative of that. And I just want to encourage you, you guys do have leverage in this regard. If this isn't what you want and it's not what the community wants, you can push back and ask them for something different. And so just do a good job.
Hello, I am Brian Reichard. I live on the furthest, see where we're at here. Just down 600, first house on the left-hand side. So the tree line that would divide our property and the back of 3 to 5 houses that would be looking right in on top of us is something that I'm overly concerned about. We moved out there 7 years ago to get away from the city. We're both open to growth, but I'm not open to having people in 2-story houses look down on top of me and everything I do in my backyard. You know, they're talking about a 50-yard or 50-foot easement over to Payne. You know, if something like this ever went in, I would hope that we had either a berm or trees or that kind of distance that would break that from us, so I don't have people staring into my entire yard, literally all the way down to one side. Something like this is obviously impacts everybody that's sitting in here, and I'm not in one of the big, huge houses, but I have invested a lot of time and a lot of money into where we're at because we love the area. We love Pendleton, and would hope that you guys consider this change and take your time on it and not rush through on making this kind of a decision. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate your comment. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Jet Ziegler, and I live right across from Brian, right where that little bit north of where that second entrance or that would go. My only thing is when you talk to people about Pendleton, the first thing they say is that small town, hometown feeling. And I think as we grow, which we're going to, I think we have to take that into consideration. Do we want to become another Fishers? Do we want to become another, Noblesville is growing big time too. Do we want to be that town that everybody wants to be in, that they come to our festivals, that they want to come to Pendleton, they want to come to visit, and maybe eventually live here? We had, I think when we talk about Jefferson Place, I think that's the last custom home builder subdivision that went in. And people came to that. People came because they wanted those custom homes. And so like the lady before me said, people will come if they know that there's land available. We have people stop by, we have 5 acres, and they ask us, will you sell us a couple acres? Because they want that small town, hometown feeling. And I implore you to think about that as we know the town's going to grow, but are we growing in the right way? Are we growing in the way that we want to be proud of, that we stay to our values, that we want to be the place that people want to come? Maybe they can't come right now, but eventually maybe they can come. So I think custom homes in this area, we don't have a custom home, but we like having them there. They're beautiful homes. The people have put a lot of time and effort into maintaining those homes and taking care of those homes. And I think if you go to some of these other subdivisions, like you're not going to get that. I worry about that park there, and with 600 being out in the country, you're going to have people come and do things in that park that they wouldn't do in Town Park because there's nobody there to monitor it. The city's not going to come out there. They're not going to send their patrols. There's no place for the patrols to walk through there or to drive through there to see if there's any vandalism going, any, drug activities going on. And that's our neighborhood. And we like that neighborhood. We like that. We don't, the guy can say, we don't lock our door, and we feel comfortable doing that. And I think people want that same feeling.
Stephanie, bottom line.
You have an online comment, didn't you?
comments on that? Anybody else? Anybody in favor, just jump on the joy or? Anybody in favor? I think we've heard a lot of comments tonight. Brian's presentation, D.R. Horton, covered their perspective rather well. I think there's a lot of questions that are unanswered at this time. You guys have been taking notes continually from the audience. Some of the main things are the density of the homes. And I think we've heard from everybody in the audience. I might speak from the board as well. Is there any way you could overlay that with the custom home subdivision only? What that would look like to us. I think that's what we really would like to see or want out there and to the neighbors. Obviously, the subdivision is the best fit for that property. We've turned down warehouses, we've turned down an auto salvage yard out there. So subdivision is the best fit for that. We just want to make sure it's the right subdivision for that land because we can't get it back. The other questions were brought up were the style and floor plans of the homes. I'd like to see some more options on the executive homes. If you have more floor plans, bigger floor plans, more custom plans. In my opinion, I don't know if the board would agree or not, they look very similar to the other homes. Maybe just a little bigger square footage.
The other comment I would make is I would like to see price points that have been adjusted for inflation over the last, depending upon which study you're using, 3 to 5 years. Because we're using basically the same price point that was outlined before. And if you do some quick calculations, basically your price points are where you are on Carrick Glen, which does not have the architectural diversity, does not have the diversity in the floor plans, and is basically starter homes with the targeted income that you said was the average income for the home buyers there.
I could piggyback off of Tim. Along with the homes, I mentioned the products. I did some research. You have there's an expanded line with James Hardy, which is the Joanna Gaines. And I think that would also make people happier because it's an expanded line of their products with different colors, choices that are a higher end executive. So I'd like to see that.
Do you have any subdivisions where you went all executive? Lee?
No, I don't believe so. I don't think we currently.
To that point, Lee or Brian, do you have any other comments?
Maybe what I'd respectfully suggest is that I was taking a lot of notes.
I know you were.
And maybe what we'd like to do is huddle with the Horton folks and see if we could address some of these issues like floor plans and design and connectivity onto 600 and drainage issues and price points. And perhaps if we could have time to come back before the Planning Commission and answer those questions maybe at the next meeting. I would just observe that the one comment that stuck with me was you could get to the same tax base by having 150 homes at 850,000. I suspect that's right. I haven't penciled that out. But I also suspect that probably unlikely that you get 158, $150,000 homes next to that site that has Payne Welker, has 114 acres that are in play, at least are for sale now, and has the campground. I think those beautiful homes in Foster Ridge and Foster Branch, which I completely agree are beautiful homes. I know the fellow that developed that quality stuff. But they're not right next to Payne Welker, and they're not right next to 115 acres. It's got a bunch of frontage on 69. They're tucked to the west of 600. That's not an answer to all that. It's just, I think if we had another 30 days to digest the board's comments and the 12 people that spoke, then maybe we can come up with some commitments and some designs that may address some, not all those, and have another crack at this.
Absolutely, right. Okay. All right, with that said, I'm gonna make a motion to.
Hey, could I
Yeah,
add one
go ahead.
thing and to just address the whole issue of the school population? And you probably know my husband's the president of the school board, so some of this information is pretty reliable. There are around 600 transfer students that come into our school system. And the school does that in order to keep the population, to keep that percentage of capacity up so that we can support our schools properly. I mean, we need to have the schools 85 to 90% full to make it financially feasible. But those 600 transfers that we get right now at $7,000 a student, that number can fluctuate depending on how many new students we have that live in the school system. So we've got some flexibility. Mr. Lord can probably confirm that I'm using approximately the right numbers. There's flexibility with that. So even as Pendleton grows in school population, we have the ability to take fewer transfers, and therefore we have a lot of capacity.
It's very true. The number also, as she says, fluctuates every year. We can also deny those transfer students coming in to make more room for our current population. So, thank you, Joe. Go ahead, Sue.
Just a quick suggestion, and it goes back to Mr. Reichard's comment with the buffer. On this rendering, it does show where there's a buffer with some whatever type of plantings. And again, we're not into the minutia yet, but because it does show plantings and then it stops before his properties, I don't know why it wouldn't carry on and have some kind of buffer there. And I mentioned that because I've personally been affected by a D.R. Horton home and a buffer. So I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like having a house overlooking your property, a buffer not properly dealt with. So I see where it's been done by Payne Welker. I wouldn't know why we wouldn't carry that through to existing homeowners and make sure that we have built proper sized berms with the right plantings to give the current and existing homeowners privacy. And I will also add, when it gets to that elevation, because that was not addressed prior, and that did affect my home previously. So that is something in future meetings possibly that we will need to, I want to make note of that now. How elevation is dealt with.
That's clarification. You mean
Yes.
topography of the grounds that we mean
Yes,
by elevation?
raising it. I live in a home.
She
that
backs up to
has-
Carrie Glenn.
Yes, and the elevation was raised so then it is looking over my backyard. And then the berm was not, I call it a bump. It's not a berm. Plantings weren't dealt with the way in which I felt like it was dealt with. I was not making the decision. I was out in the audience like these people currently are.
There's a particular definition of how berm height's measured in the UDO now, and there's like 3 different criteria that it has to measure above a certain.
I think that's a good point that Carrick Glen was prior to our UDO
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
approved. So we have, I feel like we have better standards now.
Correct. Just elevation is something that tends to be an oversight. When I say elevation, I'm talking about the land in general being raised.
Their thoughts. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to continue this petition till the December meeting. I'd ask Brian Dale Horton to please do your homework and cover those topics, your notes. If you have any questions, please direct those back to Hannah, Scott. We'll be happy to work with you between now and the December meeting to get that back in. So if I could have a motion to approve the continuance. Motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
On a second.
I'll second.
All those in favor of continuing this petition to the December meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time, CJ.
Yes. We'll ask for a 10-minute recess. That's all the new business we have, by the way, but we will recess for 10 minutes.
While the interest waned, no one wants to hear.
No one
the
wants to
business
hear
after
it.
the
That's all the UDO people.
part. Come on.
Bring in the cake and ice cream.
Refreshments are here now.
We've been through all of our candy.
I know, we had a bucket
I know
of
it.
candy.
Turns are center eating snacks for the whole meeting.
Yeah, like you're out there in a chopping block. They're gone.
All that's left is the dust.
That's
You don't
wrong.
need
That's
those
just
anymore.
wrong. Can't get your finger down to get the crumbs.
Go lick it first.
Good night, man.
Good night.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting back to order. Anna, you're up.
We just got amendments, folks. Let's see here. So if you want to follow along with that Excel sheet, that'll probably be the easiest way to do it. This is fair. You want us to just say, okay, to everything. Good job,
You look good to me. Y'all look great.
Okay.
Approved.
Oh, I thought. All right, first thing we've got is our window requirement for single family. Oh, what's oh, no, it's possessed. Happy Halloween. Right now is only, it's an either or, so you can either put 2 windows on the side or 2 windows on the front of your house. I think it's supposed to be the word and instead of or. So that would be.
So each side facade has 2 windows?
Hmm.
Each side has 2 windows?
Supposed to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should we
It would-
put
it would
should
be
we say
both
that?
sides and the front.
At least 2 minimum.
2 windows on each front and side facade.
Right,
Okay.
instead of or side. See? We're good.
COVID.
Okay, next thing I've got is a recommendation from HPC, because they allow mural signage, it just has to be, it's the only district it's allowed, has to be made of a certain material, can't be paint. So they would like there to be an amendment in the UDO for, art, like public art, because that's First Amendment, you can't regulate that, you can regulate the material. So they would like it to have a COA, which would just go through me to make sure whatever art is being proposed on a building downtown, is that either canvas or vinyl removable material. Good.
So could you have a large piece of vinyl siding and hang it over the side of the building as a mural?
That's not really the same kind of thing, is
Oh,
it?
okay.
Yeah, no, it's like what we have on our mural out here.
Oh, that
It's a
sticks to
vinyl
it.
stick-on.
Oh, okay.
It's not vinyl siding. I know we were kind of in that mode.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could call that art. I think it's
Yeah.
subjective.
Okay, everyone okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. Next thing I've got is temporary storage units. There's a lot of different ways you can get a temporary storage unit. So this is like a construction dumpster, one of those pods, like any sort of moving container. Right now in both, let's see, in residential, you don't need it if it's below a certain size and placed in a certain location on your property. Same for non-residential, but it's really hard to track that if you don't know when they put it there or where they're gonna put it. So I'd like to make a permit application just for that, not charge anything for it. Because I don't think it's necessary, just to know, being placed on this day, being placed in this spot, and it's not gonna be out of place, because.
So like when that lady on Water Street put a pod in her yard and was moving, so she would have had to come and get it.
Yeah, and said I'm gonna put it in my driveway for 2 weeks, and then it's gonna be gone.
I like that because they might put it somewhere where it
They keep it.
blocks vision too.
Yeah.
Like, you know, safety or keep them.
Right.
How will,
Now, you do need a permit for some that are above a certain size anyway, but I think we should just do it for everything, regardless of if it's a small. allowable
how
size.
can you make people aware of that? Because I doubt.
Well, I would imagine it would be, kind of like with any of our other not well-known permits, like short-term rental registration, home occupation, things like that. It's probably gonna mostly start with Brett notices it when he's out doing something or we get a call on it.
Yeah.
And then eventually it just becomes the norm.
Yeah.
We used to have a newsletter. Do we not have one anymore?
No,
Okay. Is there,
I don't know who did it before or what it entailed. Do you guys know? I know Brett has welcome packets for people in new homes when he gets in a COO, like that has, here's how to set up your utilities, the best way, and who to call if there's a water leak kind of thing.
We talked a while back
Mhm.
about having a packet even when you've got your lights turned on. Meaning you moved to town.
Uh-huh.
Or you bought a property. You bought a house, you moved to town.
Uh-huh.
You come in and get your utilities transferred over.
Oh, okay. Cause we could just take that packet really that Brett has and use that for those folks. He
Those
only-
people don't know anything about how storage barns, this. yeah.
golf carts?
Yeah.
Golf
yeah.
carts.
So let me add that as a, what is it? What'd you say? When they get their utilities switched over?
Yeah.
No, they turn off.
We used to get like a folded up like packet thing. It was in a white
Mhm.
envelope that
Walk
said
in
county
the
bills
town.
and on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Raise
know
the
he
tur-
does that for COOs.
Raise the turn on fee, $5 you have to cover the printing thing. It'd be
We'll just do
helpful.
black and white.
Nobody knows these little things.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, for sure.
in that you could have like the bees,
Chickens.
Yeah.
the
Bees.
roosters.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a developer guide packet, so it could kind of just be something like that. But
We got a lot of people coming
Rather
down.
than know
Mhm.
Moving.
Yeah.
before they do it. He'd rather than know before they do it. that they
Right,
should be doing
'cause-
it Than to get called on it and then have to
Wow.
kill your rooster. or whatever.
I think-
rooster.
I think the bigger challenge is gonna be people that are moving into the community that have loaded a pod at their remote site.
Brought it here.
They're arriving
Mhm.
and they haven't necessarily gotten all the information up front to even know it's to be
But
registered.
again, all
That's where
they,
the
you just
utility
need to know how long they're
Oh,
gonna
when
be
they got
there
their lights
and
turned
that.
on, that register that and say, hey, we
Yeah.
get the pot out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and your realtors too could have access to those.
But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and add that if everyone's okay with that. Yeah, okay. I need to update some Indiana code reference numbers for condo definition. I did it in one spot and not another. I'm gonna do that. Okay, so the last couple amendments that we have are going back to what we had talked about last month. So this was kind of figuring out the single family attached, the exterior materials we didn't want anymore, and then the traditional neighborhoods which use SF4 zoning over RC neighborhoods. So what I've done first, we'll start with kind of the last thing I just talked about, is the traditional and residential conservancy subdivision styles. So right now, those are clumped into one subdivision style. They're meant to mimic one another in a way that, shallow front setbacks, smaller lots, some alleys served if possible, really walkable pedestrian amenities, things like that. But I think Kyle made a really good point last time that if someone wants to get, kind of a higher allowable density, which we'll discuss later for residential or they could just plop it anywhere and, just to get the density. I think we should limit that to areas around our current RC zoning to have like infill, redevelopment, things of that nature. Where these kinds of subdivisions are only allowed in a certain area and they have to have kind of more stringent standards than what kind of this clumped together subdivision style is. So I'm gonna drive real quick. Thanks, Stephanie. So let me see. So we'll start with this. So this is kind of a border that I just looked at man-made, I guess what you would call, borders or divisions. So you've got cemetery, you've got railroad on the east, down at the bottom there, golf course, and then Fall Creek Drive and State Street. So I think if we were to look at where residential core subdivisions would work, I think it would kind of just be here. If you look at that area in between the mobile home park and Old 132, that's all floodplain anyway, and it's starting to get a little disconnected. You've got the falls, Carrot Glen, Pines, and whatnot up North Pennington Avenue. So to me, I think this is a good start. We can expand, we can detract, but those areas to the south are the most prone for this and are, you know, kind of entrance areas to town. Again, lots of that chunk on Fall Creek drives in the floodway, but I'm just trying to make a buffer here of where I think these would be appropriate, because I think if you were to try to take RC and plop it out on the Bonds property, it just doesn't really work. I don't know. But that's my opinion.
So we're saying RC is only permitted
Kind
in
of,
this area.
yes, in this area.
So we would add this map to the UDO then.
Mhm.
So I guess my question would be, why north of the creek are we RC? Because north of the creek, the majority of properties are multiple acres.
Mhm.
They're existing buildings and structures. I mean, even butting up to the town buildings and the cemetery and everything else.
Mhm.
We want to cut that creek.
I would say cut it at the creek and keep it in the core, because everything out there is rural residential historically.
Yes.
And you've got homes that are 1860, 1870. Unless we're gonna start allowing those property owners to subdivide their existing yards.
Well, I mean, if it fits, anybody can do that.
There's not much left up there.
There isn't much left up there. That's a good point as well, but I don't. So I think that last one there is Sandy Butler's old house, that last pink parcel, the one up on the hill. And then further to the west, getting to Old 132. I'm not familiar with any of those properties. I also would say that the National Register of Historic Places does go up and encompass this whole area. It's a much larger district than that dark pink, which is our local historic district. So that kind of mimics that just a little bit. It's not exact. It's not the same as the national district. I mean, we could have that be the borders if we want, but
What would that look like?
let me see if I have that saved anywhere. I don't know if I do.
That's where the sign is.
Yeah.
I know it goes all the way down Broadway, if I'm not mistaken, but
Doesn't the
I can
historic
provide
district,
that for you.
doesn't the historic district pick up Fall Creek Cemetery with the Civil War and Revolutionary War
Yeah, it
burials
goes-
over there?
It goes to cemetery.
Inclusive of the cemetery, is that right?
It's
I don't
pretty
think people are gonna subdivide the cemetery.
not alive people, but,
But you
But
can
I
increase the
think-
density and bury them out.
Well, that's true. The layers.
Stack.
but I think if we were to go, above the creek, I think it would stop here. And I just included that because there is in fact RC zoning up there already. Why it's that zoning, I don't know. I didn't zone it that back in the day when it was historic residential. I'm assuming because there's some historic homes up there. But again, this could just be a starting point. We can make it bigger, we can make it smaller. I don't think there's really much going on here except maybe the Howard property, you know, eventually might put a subdivision in there, but I have not had any interest in any other properties as far as subdividing or anything like that goes besides the Howard property and Kyle Smith's.
Cut it.
His was already.
Cut it.
That is great. Okay. Okay. So then that means, okay, so we are gonna go ahead and then and separate these. Is that okay with that? So this will be,
So you
if
have
you look
section
at,
B and E, is that what?
yes, D and E. Yep, we're about to bring that up. So I split these into two. These were clumped together into one. So if you look at those on there, it's called, what's the document called, Kyle? I forget. New styles. I basically just took the descriptions of SF4 zoning and put that in the traditional style. There are traditional style subdivisions. They typically are smaller lots, shallow setbacks. They could have alleys. They don't necessarily need them. They don't necessarily need all the fancy architecture features, things like that. They can, but they don't have to. And we've already got a density limit for this. So it's kind of just giving it its own subdivision style. With the RC, it would be pretty similar, except a little more strict. So, it's only in that border area. I do think we should look at requirements for this right now, just copies basically the zoning designation that's in chapter 2. But I think maybe after we do this, we should look at having a better architecture package for RC zoning, because it should look like this stuff down here. It should have a front porch. It shouldn't just be a suggestion. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think this is a good start, and then getting some density limits in here if you want them. They were historically, there's never been any for RC zoning in any of our versions of the UDO since KK wrote it. I don't know if that was because it's our densest zoning, and I just wanted to see what happened with that. So that brings me to my next point. So are we good with separating these into, that's for a more modern area. If you want it to have traditional neighborhood design guidelines, that's fine. But the RC is a little bit stricter. It's only in that one area that is outlined. Okay, cool. So
Just real quick, what is the density on RC?
That's what I'm getting to. You read my mind. So I did a block by block for, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 areas. And it averages about 6 units of single family per 1.09 acres. I did look at multifamily because I only know where a few of them are. I'm sure there's a lot of duplex rental houses. But on average, 6 units per 1.1 acres is probably pretty well. You could see some of these are 8 units in about an acre, and some of them are 4.
So I'm just looking at the lower right-hand corner, you say 4 units per 0.91 acre.
Mm-hmm.
That 0.91 is just the pink boxes added up? Because really, you should have like half of the right-of-way included in there, right?
Where
When you calculate gross density, it includes everything.
with the right of way.
Well, if you consider like a piece of property that gets developed.
Yeah.
So it's I think these numbers are probably a little low. Like, if you did a 4 units per acre, you're gonna get smaller lots than what is shown here.
Okay.
Probably because there's other stuff that takes up acreage, streets and stuff like that.
And RC doesn't really have these aren't built to have common space because there's the park nearby. And,
I think if you limit RC to that border, you probably don't need a
yeah,
maximum density.
Yeah.
You've got minimum lot sizes.
Correct.
So that's gonna
Get rid of the ones that are.
That's gonna
Well-
probably fix the.
what you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with minimum lot size in RC, what is the maximum density that you can have?
Maximum density, we don't have one.
What is it, 7,200 square?
7,200 square per single family, yeah.
So you're not gonna get more than 3 or 4 units per acre. Unless you count.
How many square feet in an acre?
4, 3, 5, 6, 7.
And maybe that's why there was never a limit put on this.
Yeah.
Because
But the
of that.
problem was you could apply this anywhere you wanted.
Correct.
To circumvent the.
Yes.
So basically 6.
Right. You just divided square footage into the middle, yeah. So that's if you had no right of way or anything. I guess if you had a parcel that was bounded by existing right of way, you could squeeze 6 lots per acre. So I don't know that there's really.
But then this one has 8.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, some of these lots are smaller than what's allowed.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, these are just existing fabric.
yeah.
So I think we just leave the gross density out of the RC. RC. Since
But-
we're
but then
confining-
just
Since we're
confining
confining it
to
to
this
the
area,
boundary.
yes, okay, okay, well then I will remove, if that's okay, I'll just remove that from the table for gross density.
So let me ask. How do you skin the cat if you want to increase your density in the RC district? I mean, as a developer,
Three-story townhome.
how do you exploit it? Okay.
You gotta go
But
up.
the
rest
problem
of-
is the minimum
Yes.
lot width is 50 feet.
Mhm.
So you're not gonna, you'd have to get a variance.
Get a variance or get 2 lots.
So with a 50-foot lot width and 7,200 square feet, there's really no way around it.
Well, the reason I'm asking is that all these developers are trying to maximize their profits by increasing the density of the housing.
Mhm.
And it's like, all right, we always seem to be a half step behind. So how is someone gonna skin the cat and get more development per acre than we intend?
Build up.
And
Build up, yeah.
Well,
But I think when you look at what RC is supposed to do and the fabric that we have downtown, I think you eliminate that being in inappropriate places by having something like this. I mean, this is supposed to be dense. It's supposed to have rear yard. It's supposed to have, you know, shallow front setbacks and side setbacks and things like that, right?
But as I look, the area that we're defining for RC is much larger than the core downtown. It's much larger than the west end of town, which had the traditional workman's cottages going towards the creek, which is some of our highest density. You know, we've basically incorporated 80% of the core town into that RC category, a lot of undeveloped space.
The minimum lot width at 50 feet is gonna keep it from, keep any density from going haywire.
And I, you know, I think too, that, like, you know, I had mentioned the outline of the National Historic District. I'm happy to provide that to you, but a lot of this area is floodway on the west side. So it can't really be built in anyway. It was just kind of a natural border.
So should the floodplains be included in the RC defined area?
I can put them on here.
Or aren't they already incorporated here? Here's the map I'm looking at. We look at the same thing.
Yeah, the floodplains aren't depicted on there, but
Yeah, we own this outside
Yeah.
of below Fall Creek Drive.
A lot of this is personal.
I mean, you could just,
And you know, some of these over here on the west side too, if you know, all these people were to sell and then someone comes in and wants to subdivide that, they'd probably want to rezone it. They probably wouldn't want to build SF1 homes here.
Yeah.
You know, so that would give some ability for the planning commission to have some say so over that. I guess that could be with anything, but,
maybe you could always put a number on there if you're concerned.
were you on the steering committee for the UDO, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember any conversations about that in particular? Why it was never listed and everything else was?
I think because it was just made to match what's here.
Right.
So you can't really put a number on the existing as a whole, so it just kind of depends on where you're at.
Mhm.
So,
And I think the RC was kind of created to allow flexibility and different types
Yeah.
of uses and.
I agree.
yeah.
I agree. All right. Okay, so we are gonna separate those. We are gonna put a border on it. Yes or no on max gross density? You want me to remove it or you want to put a number on it?
Right.
I may be the only one that's concerned.
I mean,
Okay.
you divided it out with 6, right? when you divided out the lot
If,
size.
if we don't vary from the minimum lot size of 7,200.
Yeah, you could get 6 lots.
Yeah.
So you could just put 6 on. Maximum gross density. And then if it comes up and it's an issue, maybe adjust it later.
And then that's when they come asking for
For
variance, so. That takes care of that. And we
Okay.
review it for appropriateness.
So if we did 6 units an acre for single and 2, what would you do for multi?
I mean, typically from what
Double?
I've seen, double it, but I know with ours, they're considerably lower. But that's typical from what I can tell.
So you want to put 6 on single and 2 family, what do you want to put on multi? You want to double it? Something in between.
I don't think you double it. I'm not a big density guy.
I mean, some of these were 8 per acre, is that right?
8,
And
9.
SF4
Once you
is
leave it
eight.
at 6, and it gets bigger, we'll just have to review it.
Put it for both?
Yeah.
Okay.
If it goes bigger, we'll just review it.
For multifamily, I wouldn't suggest going below 8 because your SF4 is 8 right now, so it needs to be that or better.
And I guess 8 would match this calculation, right? Roughly.
This I've got 6 as single family.
Oh, okay.
I didn't do a multifamily.
Well, if SF4 is 8, then yeah, this should be 8 too.
8 as well. All right. Brad, I definitely, I get it. I know it can be the densities in certain areas, but if it's gonna be anywhere, it should be here. Because the fabric of this area is so dense and
But
varietous.
as I look at this, we're defining a very large area that is undeveloped and incorporating it into the RC.
Mhm.
And
Right now, you can do RC anywhere you want.
Right.
So
What's even buildable besides the railroad?
You've got Howard's Acres, you got all of the SF1 that's on South Pendleton Avenue on the west side. I guess we could cut that off at Water Street. The park is never gonna put RCs on in there, but.
No, because that's a golf course.
Stops at the golf course.
So that's not, I'm not seeing the west side. This,
Yeah.
Oh,
those are homes, those are private, so.
Yeah, the west side of South Pendleton. This would be if they ever sell, if they ever want to subdivide, if they
Redevelop.
redevelop, infill, things like that. So. Okay. Any more thoughts on that one?
Like you said, they'd be coming in for rezoning and then we.
And you have, and this kind of came up tonight, so this is good that this came up. You have the ability to waive anything that's in chapter 5 or chapter 6 of the UDO in primary planning. So, like with Kyle Smith, you waived his common space necessity because, the park is nearby and it was right off to the middle of Main and Tile. Really not space for common area. Things like density, so anything that's within chapter 5 or 6. So if there is a project that, and like for your bonds property was looking to have a little higher than what we allowed 2, they wanted 2.18, you know what I mean? So you have the ability to do that as well if there's a project that you see. So do you want me to have this be 6 and 8? Or remove it? You want to think about it, come back to it? I mean,
I'm fine removing it, go back to this fine.
Or you want to put it in?
Nothing's on the. nothing's on the-
we need 3 people
Nothing's
to
on the
say
board.
something and the other 2 to answer. I want to go to bed.
I vote remove it.
Okay, 1 to remove it, Denny?
Remove.
Carol, remove? Going once?
A third? Is there a
Going
third
twice?
person?
Time's up.
Denny, I want to let you speak, but
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't see, I'm trying to be a devil's advocate by removing. I don't think we're going to cause any issues. I say remove.
There you got it.
You need-
Remove it.
You need 4.
Oh, go ahead and remove it. That's fine.
You have 7 total on the commission.
Oh, for crying out loud.
Sorry.
So Brad.
You look it up, Francis.
I've been
I'll
at
vote
this
to remove
meeting
it.
so long.
I'll vote to remove it. So that's 4, right?
Okay,
Uh,
all right.
There's just not that much.
Okay,
I don't really.
buffer yards. Okay, so,
Where are we?
okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 left.
Oh,
If you want, we can wait till next month,
Power through.
power through, okay.
We need to take
Oh, I
a
think I
vote to
kicked it
power
right.
through.
I think I kicked one. There, sorry.
All right.
No, they're on top.
Dogs come, we're going out.
They're the little white dots.
I got one here.
Well, I think I am probably right.
Buffer yards, I'm thinking RC, within this new approved border. Should we require a buffer yard similar or same as the major subdivision based on number of lots? So for example, Kyle Smith's property would be very silly with a buffer yard. It wouldn't fit and it would look ridiculous. But something like Howard's Acres, that was 150 or so homes, very appropriate to put in buffers. So what do you think is a good lot limit for an RC subdivision to have buffer?
I think we did good based on the terrain.
Yeah, I think
On the
this is the
terrain?
right one to define.
Okay. Maybe with the application for that, we can let the applicants know that that's something that they can do in rezone for primary platting.
Primary platting.
Primary platting.
Could you use wording like may require a buffer based on?
I could do that.
That's good.
May require based on,
Topography.
okay.
And I don't know if we want to limit that, it just may require based on.
Particular.
Yeah,
Based on the site.
Based on,
based
yeah,
on
like a
the
case by
site,
case.
yeah, just
Can't be
keeping
as
it
much legally as
open.
possible.
All
Yeah.
right. So we will.
Because it could be a railroad track,
Yeah.
it could, like we have, or some other thing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will just change that verbiage to reflect that. We also don't have a buffer yard for the traditional, so if I want to have a, traditional style neighborhood on Mayor Bond's property, it doesn't require buffer yards right now. I suggest what we would do is something like this, or just include it in the major subdivision table. That's 312.
Add it to that table.
So it's major and traditional, has to do this. Okay. So I will add that to, that's table 312 and 313 to major subdivision. Okay. Dwelling definitions. Where's the presentation? Ready to go. Original presentation. Yes, yeah.
Worry.
We gotta go through Brian's. Oh, heck yeah. Cool. That's not what I'm looking for. There we go. Okay, so if you look on the presentation, if you can't see this on your iPads, we have a lot of definitions for dwelling. I know last time we had talked about if we're gonna be allowing single family attached, we need to make sure it's defined as it's this whole 1, 2, 3 story structure. It is owned by one person. It's on its own lot, etc. I think we have that taken care of. But we can add townhouse if you want, because as far as I can tell, townhouses are described the way we define single family attached, so we could add the following. Townhouse is defined as C, dwelling, single family attached if it's a single unit, a single structure, or C, dwelling, multifamily if multiple units within one structure. So it's basically either a multifamily designation or it's a single family designation, depending on what the developer wants to do. So single family attached is a housing unit connected side by side, generally with a shared wall, living space for one household or family, separately owned. They're considered single family houses as long as they're not divided into more than one housing unit and have an independent entrance. So I think that's pretty well on with that. And then we have a condo.
So what does it mean by single unit in a single structure?
So that would be your one house, that's one family living unit, one household unit.
So the structure is not the entire townhome with all the units.
That would be multifamily, as far as I can tell. Yeah. So this would just be one person, it's a ranch, it's a 2-story, it's a 3-story, they own all the floors. They own the whole house.
So it's not like they share
There's no
There's no firewall.
Yeah, right, right. So they would, if they're in the middle, they'd share a party wall with the left and right, but they would still have their own. Does that make sense? Is there anything else I can clarify with that? I think we're pretty well covered. If you think there's another definition we should add, something we should change with that, I think we can pretty well define, you know, if a developer comes in and says, I want to build this, where it would go zoning wise, and then as far as density wise, it would be according to that kind of subdivision. Because I haven't really had anyone come in and say anything else other than what we've got here. So I can add that townhouse definition if that sounds okay. 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 Thank you. All right, so the last two things that we have is just our attached homes, those bright yellow columns, adding those. This kind of home is mentioned in a few different places within our UDO. That's why I had us add a definition. But then I realized we had no rules for it. So that's what we're doing, is we're creating rules so that when someone comes in and says, this says I can put single family attached, it's not willy-nilly. So again, if you can't see it up here,
So this is where you could get into a density issue with RC, because now we have single family attached with a 20-foot lot within RC.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
At 20 feet, you just double the capacity. That's 10 feet unallocated of a 50-foot, but we just did the calculation on.
I mean, the minimum lot area is like 2,000 square feet, 20 by 100. So how many units can you fit? How many 2,000 square foot lots can you fit in an acre? It's like 22 or 23.
Yeah.
So maybe by adding this. All right. Maybe, I mean, maybe adding this would.
I respectfully disagree.
Maybe if
I
you-
think that someone will come in and try to leverage
Tiny
high
houses.
density housing. We've already had a couple of plays where people have been interested in tiny houses.
Yeah,
And
you're
if you get some property here that you can leverage, properties at a premium.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I'm saying with this in mind, maybe we should go back and revisit those densities and put something in there. And you can always waive it or get a variance, but if it's not in there, then you've got no control.
I can agree to that.
21.78.
So do we want to go? I guess we can finish this note.
Sure. So do you want me to leave this out and you want to come back and visit it next month? Is
No,
that
I
what
thi-
you're saying?
No, I think it's okay to add this, but we need to go back up to the gross density. for
Okay.
ours.
Okay. And what note do you want me to
We're
add?
gonna do 6 and 8, right?
6 and 8.
Okay.
So 6, yeah, the 2 density numbers for RC.
Okay, 6 single family, 8 multifamily, for RC zoning instead of removing the max gross density.
And then they can come in for a variance of, they have
Sure.
a different kind of a.
Yeah.
Concept that might work for that
Particular spot.
space,
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, and so then as far as these
The
two,
yellow is being added, is that?
yes, the yellow is, the bright yellow there is being added. So I suggested we only add this as being allowed in SF4 NRC zoning to start. And then maybe we could branch out into other single family zones. SF3 does have a little flexibility, but these two are the most flexible. They allow single family, two family, multifamily, etc. RC even allows, I think, a little bit of business, non-residential. One of them is non-residential. Maybe I'm wrong.
The only thing I would think possibly is the rear yard setback.
Okay.
So right now it's at 15, which if you've got a rear loaded structure, means you could have a 15-foot driveway, which is too short.
Okay.
So maybe bump that up to 20.
20. Okay.
Let me just say timeout because I experienced parking problems out here on State Street with regard to the size of the parking spaces with pickup trucks tonight, where they overlap into the spots. The point was brought up that the expeditions, large pickup trucks, the full size, the Suburbans, you need more than 23 feet of depth to park it on your property.
I mean, for the detached single family and two family, the rear is 25.
I think it should be a minimum of 25. Gives you sufficient
You'll never
space to
be able
get
to
out.
You're better to be able to maneuver to get out. That's the street.
Well, this would be on a rear alley, more than likely.
Front is 25 to just make the front and rear 25.
Yeah, I think the front's already 25.
Sad rest.
No.
25 feet will accommodate.
I have a friend who lives on the Monon at 21st or like in college, basically. And they back up to the Monon and getting out of their garage is like a major challenge, even in like my car. And you really have to like cut it aggressively, be able to make the turn and not just like saw back and forth, like trying to get out into an alley.
Mhm.
So I think if rear setback, like we need to be mindful of turning radius, trying to get out of those garages if you're gonna utilize an alley system is all. I-
Because the alley system, what is the width on an alley system?
Alleys are minimum 20.
Maybe I'm a bad driver. I'm just saying.
Really big.
I would go 25.
Okay,
So
we can do that.
change both.
Both
Change
what?
Both Marissa
Both,
clause.
you got two tables here.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right, so we'll do rear for.
Because they're the same, basically, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Mhm. Rear, 25 feet. Okay, we've got 25 feet for both of those. Now, do we want to do 2,000 squares, the minimum lot area?
I mean, if you have a 25-foot front and a 25-foot rear, you've got 50 foot left for the building. If you only have a 75-foot deep lot, you're only gonna have a 20 by 25-foot little square. That's probably too small.
Well, the minimum living area is 800 square on the ground floor.
So that would be 20 by 20.
That's 400.
So if you do a 20 by 75, you can't even fit an 800 square foot first floor.
Okay, so we want to do 2,000?
So might as well go to.
Okay.
Make sure, does that math work? What's 50 times, yeah, that's 1,000, right? 50 times 20. So that works. Okay, so it's possible. Let's make sure it's possible. So
2,000? Yeah, good for everybody?
Oh, wait a minute. Twenty feet of width, correct? 50 feet, that's 1,000, it's in excess of the 800
800
square feet minimum, so that that fits.
But I am gonna have a provision on here, same as with the single family detached, with your except, let's see. Front load garages used by attached units must use a frontage access road. Kind of like what our bonds showed, where it's, because those driveways, if they're front loaded and attached, will be very close. So not having the pedestrian experience there. This does say on a local street, a resident with a front loading garage shall abide by the 25-foot minimum. And then garages that are rear or side loaded utilize a 10-foot. So I think our minimum front setback for a lot of these, if they're rear loaded, is going to be 10 feet, just to let you know. So they'll have a very large driveway.
So the 25 foot on the front load driveway, is that to the edge of the sidewalk?
Typically the right of way is a foot off the sidewalk, closer to the house.
Inside.
So it's a foot inside.
Typically, it can be more.
So that is adequate depth. That would park a vehicle up against the door and not have it protruding into the sidewalk area.
Yeah, it'd be 26 feet in theory.
Okay.
Okay.
Because if I hit another trailer hitch, my shin.
Oh, yeah.
So slow learner.
Let's take you out of the shins and they take me out of the hip. So,
Do they park on both sides of the street in Carrick Glen?
No, one side, I think.
I know it was prohibited on one side, but I don't know if it's enforced.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of like, it's an HOA covenant, so.
We're gonna park on both sides, sure there are now.
Well, and
I don't
right
know if
now,
they enforce it or if
you
they
got a
call
lot
the
of
police
service
department.
people.
Yeah.
You got people still
You
coming
got
in. They look
construction
at
people up there.
TVs, they're still building.
So they're exempt from the law.
There's nowhere for them to go.
They're coming in for hookups and adding extra patios right
Yeah.
now. And
I know.
But I walk there so much, but by the evening you see a difference.
Yeah.
Than during the day.
Do you want to limit, so I'm gonna just add this yellow column then to these. If that's okay with everyone. So we're gonna go 2,000 square, and then the front yard, or excuse me, rear yard setback on everything is now 25.
What is the 1,500 square feet?
So that was just an option.
Okay, we've struck that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did on my notes here. Okay. So this is an example of that alley load. I think this is also something that we will look at an architecture package for RC zoning, and maybe also something for, areas that use this that are not RC zoning. So SF4, maybe eventually another zoning district, but we'll start with these. So these are our current anti-monotony standards. I think they're pretty sufficient. Again, I think RC zoning is, I'm gonna try to give it its own kind of package, just because that's kind of our important area. Historic, I should say. So if you want, the only things I could really think of anti-monotony wise to add that would pertain to a little bit more to just the single family attached was the no more than so many per block, I guess you could say. The places I've usually seen is 5 to 7 attached units in a block. So we could do something like that. We could also add a front porch or overhang or entry feature is required. Again, I'm gonna kind of make RC its own package, but we could do this in the meantime.
So within a block, but I think the other defines block, it's like block length.
Yeah, it
So it
can't be
needs to
more
be
than
a-
700 feet. I guess we could say,
So you can't have more than 5 units in 700 feet.
well, that's a very good point that I didn't think of. So we could have like just 5 only as buildings, you know what I mean? Like
So a maximum number of units in a building.
yeah, of attached units within a,
I would say you want.
under
at
a
least-
shared roof.
At least 6.
6? Okay.
We've done up to 8, but
Could we ask for a variety of trees so they don't plant all red maples?
I think there's.
Denise?
Oh, it's-
That seems like, I think
let's do Bradford Parish instead.
No,
Absolutely not.
Let's walk right off.
Like I'm down to half of one of those left.
Yeah.
I have.
I thought there was something in our landscaping standards about only a certain percentage can be from one species. It's not the UDO.
Not that I'm aware of. I know that we give credits for certain kinds of. There is, yeah, let's figure it out. We don't allow red regular anymore. So the ones that are going on, if they have those, then yes, we do, but anything new, we're maxed on maples.
The landscape standards needs to be updated for variety and, yeah, anti-monotony.
Ooh,
Landscape.
anti-monotony landscaping. Oh, I like that. Okay, let's look into that. But as far as anti-monotony for these buildings to start, let's do 6 units on an attached structure. Good?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then I was gonna say a front porch feature, just for now, something to have in there. An overhang, it could be a raised porch, it could be a patio porch, something with the, the roof built over it.
Yeah.
Yes. Is there anything else you can think of right now that you would like added, for that in particular? I mean, each of the units would have to follow this because they're attached, so they'd have to, one has to be pink and one has to be purple and one has to be Victorian and the other one has to be Craftsman. You know what I mean? Like they have to follow this. There's certain things in here they cannot do, so they're limited to, like they can't have the placement of the home on the site is rotated. You can't do that. So when you eliminate those things, it's kind of set that it's probably gonna be architecture, material, color, things like that. I think it's pretty solid. But we can definitely add. Okay, last thing I have, promise. Do you want to limit the percentage in either of those subdivision styles, so the SF4 or the RC? Do you want to limit the amount of attached housing within the whole subdivision?
So you
10%, 20%.
So you don't do a whole development, just have.
Do you want that? You tell
I
me.
mean, we already have a cap on density. So.
Do we need it? Do we not?
I can't envision an entire development
I can't
of
either.
this, but then it's again, are we pulling a percentage out of the air and what is the right percentage?
If we had a turd of a lot like Howard's over there. Yeah. That,
No, I see.
But only 8 units per acre.
No, it would be 6. These are treated as single family homes.
6. So. I mean, what if you have a 4-acre parcel? I mean, I don't think you want to try to put a percentage that's.
Yeah, that's
made
why
up.
I'm, again, if it's a large lot, seeing rows of this, no, if it's a small,
Right.
that,
So should we add that same language for this as far as the amount we would allow, like we did with the buffer? May require buffer based on case by case basis as determined by the planning commission. And do it that, can we do it that way?
maybe limited
Or is that-
It'd be good to have some kind of, some standard by which they'll be basing on evidence, case by case. Always try to advise against, we can do whatever we want standards.
Yeah.
So-
That's why I'm a little worried with the buffer too. I mean, I get that, but somebody else might.
so a small area being developed,
Do we have an acreage?
Yes.
Okay.
if we'd have a handful of these, what would not feel like too much?
sooner or later, somebody's gonna find just a spot to want to build on there. There's not gonna be that left.
You know, like a small row of them would
So we
be-
could say a development under 12 acres, 10 acres, something like that, and anything over would have to consider both of these items, because I'm thinking we should add something like that for buffer yard too. It is a little too ambiguous.
Can I, 10 acres, is that what you said?
Just
Right there.
suggestion, yeah. So anything under 10 acres.
Would something like that require a common
All
space.
subdivisions do require a common space. But you know, instances like Kyle Smith's, it was waived because it was
Sure.
considered inappropriate for that
But,
area.
but say, in this case, you're gonna have this type of dwelling, and say on 10 acres.
Yeah, it's usually, it's
Should be
25% for SF4 and RC, overall common space or open space.
What's that, 10 acres?
Okay. So I will add that, kind of language with the buffer yards as well, so it's a little less open. That, you know, anything over 10 acres would be considered for this buffer yard type of thing. Okay, 10 acres. Okay, that's all I have, so now we need a vote.
What about exterior materials? Did we talk about that on that list?
Why is that not on my list?
See, on that
There's a
matrix,
whole- There's a whole table in the.
says,
Oh, I cut it off, that's
see
fine.
presentation, we do not regulate roof materials, that's kind of important since
Yeah.
the current Carrick Glen has all the same roof materials.
Oh, sorry.
Hey, it's
You
not-
guys all found it. Mine was cut off at
9:58.
anti-monotony standards, folks, okay?
How much time did we buy on Zoom for tonight?
Did they kick us off Zoom
No,
yet?
I'm teasing.
It used to only be 40 minutes you were allowed on Zoom. Okay, so what I found from our conversations is we need to have a designation between standing seam metal exposed and standing seam metal concealed. Because it's a little too ambiguous and there's no definition, and then the vinyl siding has also been an issue. So I haven't had any issues with any of those other products, any of the areas they're allowed or disallowed. It's really what I'm hearing from you guys is mostly the standing seam metal and the vinyl. This kind of stuff we need to revise on here. So with that said, what I did is I took all the places where standing seam metal was allowed and was prohibited. And I split it into two. So exposed fasteners would probably be the most appropriate if you're building, and again, remember, these are for now primary and accessory structures.
But
Would be
not roofs.
not roofs.
So this should say exterior wall materials.
I can change it.
I mean, because there's people in Carrick Glen building exposed fastener porches on the back of their house.
Oh, really? Okay. Yep. All right, so you
Can we
said,
regulate roof materials?
don't know why we.
I mean, if it says
But-
exterior materials, why wouldn't it include the roof?
I don't know. Should we define it as all
I think
items?
it makes sense to regulate it all.
Yeah, you're gonna get the trooper award for sitting through this.
They probably don't have to pull permits because they're not tied into the house. Right?
If it's,
For those
if it's a,
covering.
if it'd be an accessory structure, right? You're talking about like a,
It's a freestanding little canopy on the back of
freestanding.
the house, but it's not attached to the house.
Yeah, correct, it's freestanding.
so it's like a
not
pergola?
attached.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
With a
it's
steel- with a steel roof.
with a full roof, some
Well, they're
wires
supposed
for.
to.
Well,
That's
permit-
considered an
permit
accessory
audit.
structure. The
You didn't
pergola,
get- you didn't get
gazebo,
the packet.
deck.
There's a lot of them and they're all done by the same person, because I talked to him. Went out, checked it out. wanna
You
know
can't
how
put
much
one
he-
up on a permit.
I wanna know how much she.
You do a
Charge.
permit on the record, board
I just wanted
commissioner.
to, I just wanted to be up on that deck
Yeah.
looking at it, so. I
Well,
started the conversation.
maybe that's a conversation for another day, because I don't know
That's right.
anything about roofing materials. These seem to all be materials for a wall. As far as I can tell, you know, vinyl, stucco, concrete block, those aren't things you use on the roof. So if you want, I can say exterior wall material, if that helps, or we can just leave it as it is. Because I think if we're gonna start talking roofs, we need a whole other table.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna change this to wall, and we can talk about roofs another day.
Yeah,
Okay.
we probably should address it.
Concerning the wall material, is anyone else concerned or have any comments on the vinyl?
We're gonna get there. So,
Doesn't say allowed on any vinyl.
no, it
It's all
doesn't,
green.
because we were gonna ask about a percentage, but the standing seam metal, let's get that taken care of first. So the exposed fasteners, I figured in rec and open space or ag areas, rural res, probably a lot more appropriate to have those there, and you've got farmers with buildings, whatnot. Most of the time, farmers don't need a permit anyway. Because if it's a structure purely for farming, it does not require a permit. And agriculture is defined in the definition section. So that, and then allowing the concealed fasteners in all of the other districts, and then keeping it prohibited in both of these where it's prohibited now.
So based on this table, you could build an A-frame house with press board roof, and it would be allowed.
Yeah, but who would do that?
Someone would.
Someone.
You can use any material you want, because it's the roof.
I'm doing it.
Let's add a roof table, okay, folks?
We're gonna have roofs next.
Okay.
Need a roof table.
Now vinyl siding, I kept it prohibited everywhere. It's technically prohibited in the table we have now. But what we need, and I think would be appropriate, is instead of allowing this just carte blanche, is to have a percentage of vinyl allowance on all of these. That was what our consultant also suggested. She said outright banning will get you into trouble with fair housing and things of that nature. So
Do we have a standard on gauge vinyl?
there is a rigidity
It's
standard.
in the UDO?
Mhm.
Okay.
I don't know if it's sufficient. Tim, have you looked at it? I don't know if it's like a good standard. It's a rigidity standard. And it calls out some sort of product number or product reference.
Probably hard pressed to find that data conveniently on all drivers. Usually it's on bill.
Kyle, if you look on, it's around 59.
Page 59.
It's probably on 60 because it's after the. So it said something about vinyl siding standards for rigidity.
Do we know any case law regarding?
Jeff, do you know
I-
any?
There is, well, I'd rather not talk about it during a public meeting, but there is definitely, and the issue comes from the federal government on what you're doing as far as what development standards. She
Mhm.
mentioned the Fair Housing Act.
Mhm.
That's where they're getting you, and it involves levels of discrimination.
Right.
Yep, that is prohibited and high visibility.
Okay.
It gives an ASTM.
Yeah.
standard. So, I mean,
Is
nobody's
that-
gonna
is
even
that-
know what- Nobody knows what that means.
Tim knows what that means.
It always goes by mill thickness.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we want to do some research into a percentage and leave it as it is right now as far as the allowances? We do have it prohibited in some areas. Do you think we need to be worried about that right now?
No, as long as, in some areas, it's fine.
Yeah,
Most of
like
the
downtown
residential
business, it wouldn't be appropriate down here.
Correct.
Okay,
And we're looking at new developments.
correct.
You put not allowed in historic districts.
It's not allowed in downtown.
So we're really talking about just.
It's mostly housing. There's one business district, that's the neighborhood business district, which is kind of like how RC is to SF4, downtown business is to neighborhood business. So. Okay,
Vinyl-sided roof,
you're gonna think of every type of roofing material like that. You're like, we're building
Right.
dog houses.
You can include
I
blue,
know, you're building a dog.
include blue tarps too.
This is not a lean-to, this is my home. So we want to just keep this as it is right now, do some more research, maybe get some case law, see what,
So you're gonna put some A, you're gonna fill it in with A's though.
I am. I left it open so you could tell me what percentage to do, but I don't think we're at that point.
Let's do that.
I just feel like we need to be smart about this one.
I agree.
I mean, it's not about personal preference, it's about being smart with the law and what precedence is out there.
Yeah, I think
and
that's a good idea.
And what then works the best for what we envision for our town.
Mhm.
based upon that information.
Right. And I think too, we'll probably be looking at, percentage. There's things that you've never noticed for vinyl. I think Tim last time he said things like having it up in the gables and things where in soffits and things of that nature where it's just kind of out of the way. So, okay, so let's look into that. So now that's all I have.
I have a motion to accept the changes to UDO amendments as noted tonight. Second,
I second.
all those in favor to accept the UDO changes and amendments as stated, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Thank you. Any more questions or comments?
No.
Sir, do you have any questions or comments?
Chris, why are you still here?
Why are you here, sir? You lose your right home?
Chris is contemplating putting a plywood roof on.
Yeah, we have any ideas, Kyle?
Just caught the joints really well. Meeting adjourned.